The two pink lines appeared on the pregnancy test like a sunrise, beautiful, inevitable, and life-changing. I sat on the edge of my bathtub, hands trembling, as tears of joy streamed down my face. At 27, I hadn't planned this, but sometimes the best gifts come unexpectedly. My name is Natalia, and that moment in my bathroom marked the beginning of both a dream and a nightmare. You're what? My mother's fork clattered against her plate, the sound echoing through our weekly family dinner. I hadn't planned to announce it so soon, but the smell of Aunt Athena's signature lasagna had turned my stomach, and my quick dash to the bathroom had raised suspicions. I'm pregnant, I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. About 6 weeks along, the silence that followed was deafening. My father, Gerard, stopped mid-chew, while my cousin, Kinley's face went completely white. Aunt Athena reached across the table to grip Kinley's hand, her knuckles turning as pale as her daughter's face. But you're not even married, my mother finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. What about your art career? The gallery showing next month? I straightened my shoulders. I can be both a mother and an artist. Plenty of women do it. This isn't about your art, Aunt Athena cut in, her voice sharp. Have you considered what this means for Kinley? My confusion must have shown on my face because she continued, her words gaining momentum like a boulder rolling downhill. Kinley and Tom have been trying for 3 years. 3 years of fertility treatments, 2 miscarriages, and here you are, accidentally pregnant, unmarried, living paycheck to paycheck with your paintings. Athena, my father warned, but she wasn't finished. It's perfect, actually, she said, her eyes lighting up with an intensity that made my skin crawl. You can give the baby to Kinley. It would stay in the family, and you could focus on your career. The room started spinning. What? Think about it, my mother chimed in, and my heart shattered at her betrayal. Kinley and Tom have a beautiful home, financial stability. They're ready for a baby. You're not. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is my baby we're talking about. Kinley spoke for the first time, her voice trembling. Please, Natalia. You don't know what it's like, wanting something so badly and watching everyone else get it so easily. So I should just hand over my child? Like it's a painting I can just give away? The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Be reasonable, Aunt Athena snapped. This isn't about you anymore. Think about what's best for the baby. I looked at my father, silently pleading for support, but he just stared at his plate, shoulders hunched. The betrayal cut deeper. I need some air, I managed to say, grabbing my purse and heading for the door. Behind me, I could hear chairs scraping as people stood. Natalia, wait, my mother called. We're just trying to help. I spun around, one hand protectively covering my still flat stomach. Help? You want to help? Then try supporting your daughter instead of trying to give her baby away. You're being selfish, Aunt Athena declared, standing with her hands on her hips. This is a blessing in disguise. God works in mysterious ways, and he clearly meant for this baby to be Kinley's. The room fell silent again, but this time it was different. This silence felt like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air is charged with electricity and possibility. The only mysterious thing here, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands, is how you can stand there and claim to love me while trying to take my child away. This baby is mine, and if any of you try to change that, I swear I'll make you regret it. I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Delaney. How did it go? I stared at the message, tears finally spilling over. How could I possibly explain that my family had just tried to claim my unborn child? That my mother had sided with them? That in the span of one dinner, everything I thought I knew about my family had been turned upside down? Another text came through. Want me to come over? I started the car, my hands still shaking, but my resolve growing stronger with each passing second. They thought I would just roll over and give up my baby. They had no idea what I was capable of. Yes, I texted back, and bring your phone. We need to record everything from now on. They want you to what? Delaney's voice rose so high it cracked. We sat cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by half-eaten containers of ice cream and tissues. Give my baby to Kinley, I repeated, the word still feeling surreal, like it's a Christmas present or something. That's insane. Delaney grabbed her phone and started typing furiously. I'm texting Jack right now. He's the best family lawyer in the city, and he owes me a favor. A lawyer? Isn't that a bit extreme? Delaney fixed me with a stern look. Your family just tried to claim your unborn child. Trust me, you need legal protection. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. I showed it to Delaney. Please call me. We need to discuss this rationally. Kinley hasn't stopped crying. Block them, Delaney said firmly. All of them. At least until you talk to Jack. The next morning, I sat in Jack Nelson's office, nervously twisting a tissue in my hands. He was younger than I expected, with the kind eyes that hardened when I mentioned my aunt's name. Athena Stanley? He leaned forward. I know her well. She tried to pull something similar with my sister years ago. What do you mean? Different situation, same manipulation tactics. He pulled out a legal pad. Tell me everything that happened at that dinner, word for word, if you can remember. I recounted the conversation while Jack took notes, his frown deepening with each detail. They've already shown their hand, he said finally. They're going to paint you as unstable and unprepared for motherhood. We need to get ahead of this. But they're my family, I protested weakly. Would they really? My phone buzzed with a text from Kinley. Can we meet? Just us? Please? Jack read the message over my shoulder. Don't respond. They're trying to get you alone, probably to pressure you more. From now on, all communication goes through me. What should I do? Document everything. Save texts, emails, voicemails. Record conversations if you can. This state has one-party consent laws. He started writing on a fresh page. We'll also need to establish your stability, your income, living situation, support system. They'll try to use your art career against you, so we'll show how it makes you a perfect candidate for flexible parenting. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Athena this time. Your mother is heartbroken. How can you be so cruel? This could be God's plan. God's plan, I scoffed, showing Jack the message. More like Aunt Athena's plan. This is good, Jack said, taking a photo of the message with his phone. Keep them coming. Every manipulative text is evidence. Evidence of what? Emotional coercion. If they try anything legal, we'll be ready. He handed me a business card. I'm taking your case pro bono. The Stanleys need to learn they can't keep doing this to people. When I left Jack's office, I felt stronger, but my hands still shook as I drove home. A familiar car was parked outside my apartment. My father's. He stood when I approached, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Can we talk? I remembered Jack's words about recording everything. I pressed the record button on my phone before answering. Depends. Are you here to convince me to give away my baby too? No, he sighed. I'm here to apologize. I should have spoken up at dinner. But you didn't. I know. I've always tried to keep peace in the family, but this time... He ran a hand through his gray hair. This time they've gone too far. Dad, they want to take my baby. They won't, he said firmly. I won't let them. But Natalia, you need to be prepared. Your aunt, she's not going to back down easily. Neither am I, he smiled sadly. No, you never have. You're just like your mother used to be before. Before what? But he just shook his head. Be careful, sweetheart. And whatever happens, know that I'm on your side. As I watched him drive away, Delaney's text lit up my phone. Jack called me. We're building your support network. Don't worry. We've got this. I placed a hand on my stomach, feeling stronger than I had since that dinner. They thought I was alone, unprepared, easy to manipulate, but they were wrong. I had people in my corner, and more importantly, I had something worth fighting for. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from an unknown number. "This is Jack. First rule, start a diary, document everything. Second rule, trust no one in your family right now. Third rule, get ready for war." I took a deep breath and typed back, "I'm ready." The gallery was quiet, except for the soft clicking of my heels on the hardwood floor as I hung my latest paintings. My first solo show was in 2 weeks, and I was determined to prove I could handle both my career and impending motherhood. "Need help?" a voice called from the doorway. I turned to see my mother standing there, looking uncertain. I kept my phone recording in my pocket as I answered, "I've got it covered." She walked in anyway, her eyes moving from painting to painting. "These are beautiful, honey. The colors are so alive." "Why are you here, Mom?" She wrung her hands together. "I miss you, we all do. Maybe if we could just talk about giving away my baby?" "No thanks." "You're not being fair," she said, her voice hardening. "Kinley has been to 3 doctors this week. Her depression is getting worse. And that's my fault?" I hung another painting with more force than necessary. "What about my mental health? Does anyone care how I'm doing?" "Of course we do. That's why—" She stopped abruptly, and I turned to face her. "That's why what?" She looked away. "Nothing. Just— Athena found a wonderful adoption lawyer. He could draw up the papers." "Get out!" My voice shook with anger. "Now." After she left, I called Jack. "They're already talking to lawyers." "Good," he said. "Let them waste their money. How's the documentation going?" "I've recorded everything, like you said, but something's weird. My mom started to say something about why they're doing this, then stopped herself." "Interesting. Keep digging. Family secrets have a way of coming out under pressure." That evening, I was sorting through old family photos for my documentation when I found it, a picture I'd never seen before. My mother, clearly pregnant, standing next to Aunt Athena, who was also pregnant. The date on the back made no sense. It was the year before I was born, and Kinley was already a year old in the picture. My hands trembling, I called my father. "Dad, I found a photo. Mom and Aunt Athena, both pregnant, the year before I was born. How is that possible?" The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. "Dad, I never wanted you to know," he finally said, his voice heavy. "Your mother, she lost that baby. 7 months along. Athena had her baby a month later, but it didn't survive either. When your mother got pregnant with you the next year, Athena never really got over it. She always thought, well, it doesn't matter what she thought." "Yes, it does," I insisted. "Tell me." He sighed. "She thought your mother didn't deserve another chance when she couldn't have one. She's been holding on to that bitterness for 27 years. The pieces clicked into place. And now, history's repeating itself. Kinley can't have a baby, and I'm pregnant." "You didn't hear this from me," he said quietly. "But yes, this isn't about what's best for your baby. This is about a decades-old grudge." I sent the recording of this conversation to Jack immediately. His response came quickly. "This changes everything. Keep this quiet for now. It's our ace in the hole." The next day, Aunt Athena showed up at my gallery unannounced. "We're family," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "We shouldn't need lawyers." I kept my phone recording. "Funny, Mom mentioned you already found one. Only to make things easier, to do what's right. Like you thought it was right to punish my mother all these years?" She stiffened. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the pregnancies, Aunt Athena, about your baby and Mom's loss, about how you've resented her ever since." The color drained from her face. "Who told you? Does it matter? What matters is you're doing it again. using my baby to hurt my mother through me. You have no idea what you're talking about, she snapped, but her hands were shaking. This is about Kinley. No, it's about you. Your pain, your loss, your bitterness. But I won't let you use my child to settle your old scores. She grabbed her purse, heading for the door. You'll regret this, Natalia. When you're struggling as a single mother, when your art career falls apart, you'll wish you'd listened. Maybe, I called after her, but at least my child will know their mother fought for them. I sent the new recording to Jack with a message. Got her to show her true colors. What's next? His reply made me smile. Now we go for the knockout punch. Come to my office tomorrow. Time to file for a restraining order. The pieces were falling into place. They wanted a war, fine, but they'd forgotten one thing. I had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. The coffee shop was neutral territory, or so I thought. Kinley had texted asking to meet, promising to come alone. I agreed, partly because Jack said it could help our case, and partly because, despite everything, she was still my cousin. You look good, Kinley said, sliding into the booth across from me, her eyes fixed on my small baby bump, now visible at 12 weeks. Thanks. I kept my phone on the table, recording. You said you wanted to talk. She wrapped her hands around her untouched coffee cup. I miss you. We all do. Remember when we were kids? How we promised to be there for each other's big moments. This isn't what we meant, and you know it. I've been seeing a therapist, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. She says I need to be direct about my feelings. So here it is. I can't have children, Natalia. Ever. The last treatment failed, and my body, it just won't happen. My heart ached for her despite everything. I'm sorry, but let me finish. She reached across the table, but I pulled my hands back. You're an artist. You create beautiful things every day. But this could be the most beautiful thing you ever create. Giving us this gift, letting us raise your baby. Stop! I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. My baby isn't a gift to be given away. They're not a painting or a sculpture. They're my child. Please, her voice cracked. We have everything ready. The nursery is painted. We've bought clothes, toys. You did what? The recording forgotten. I stared at her in horror. Without even asking me? Mom said it would work out. She promised. Tears streamed down her face. She said you'd understand once you saw how prepared we are. A couple at the next table was staring now, but I didn't care. Your mother is using you, Kinley. Using your pain to settle an old score with my mom. That's not true, but doubt flickered across her face. She wouldn't. Ask her about the pregnancies, about the babies they lost before I was born. Ask her why she really wants my baby. Kinley's phone buzzed. Aunt Athena's face lit up the screen. Of course she wasn't really alone. You should answer that, I said, gathering my things. Ask her why she never told you about her lost baby. Ask her why she's really doing this. I was halfway to the door when Kinley called out, Wait! There's something you should know. I turned back. Her face had changed, hardened somehow. Mom already filed papers. She has evidence that you're unstable, that your lifestyle isn't suitable for a baby. The lawyer says we have a strong case. The betrayal stung, but I forced myself to smile. Tell Aunt Athena nice try. But next time, don't meet someone for coffee when there's a restraining order pending against your family. Her face fell. What? Check your mail. I walked out, hands shaking as I called Jack. They filed papers, I said as soon as he answered, and they're building a case against me. Good thing we got that recording, he replied calmly. Their lawyer's going to love hearing Kinley admit they're planning this behind your back. Come to my office, now. When I arrived, Delaney was already there, along with my father. What's going on? Intervention, Delaney said. Show her, Jack. He pulled out a file. Your aunt's been busy. She's contacted your gallery trying to cancel your show, called your landlord about noise complaints that never happened, even tried to access your medical records. She can't do that, No, she can't, my father said grimly. And that's not all. Tell her, Jack. The lawyer they hired? He's known for dirty tactics. We need to move fast. I've filed for emergency protective orders, but you need to be prepared. They're going to try to break you down. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. Please don't do this. The restraining order will tear this family apart. The family's already torn apart, I said, showing them the message. They did that. Then let's tear it down the rest of the way, Jack said, pulling out more papers. Time to go nuclear. Your aunt's past, the false reports, the harassment. We're putting it all in the open. But Kinley, I hesitated. She's as much a victim as I am. Sometimes, my father said softly, the kindest thing you can do is let the truth hurt. It's the only way to heal. I signed the papers Jack put in front of me, each signature feeling like another brick in a wall between me and my family. But as I felt my baby move for the first time, a tiny flutter like butterfly wings, I knew I was doing the right thing. They wanted to play hardball? Fine. But they were about to learn that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. They did what? I gripped the edge of Jack's desk, staring at the papers in front of me. The gallery had canceled my show, citing personal issues that might affect attendance. Your aunt's work, Jack confirmed, but she slipped up. The gallery owner recorded their conversation. Apparently, Athena threatened to spread rumors about drug use if they didn't cancel. My father, who had become a regular at these meetings, slammed his fist on the desk. That's it. I'm done playing nice. Dad, no, listen. He pulled out his phone. I've kept quiet about a lot of things to keep the peace, but this ends now. He dialed a number, putting it on speaker. Hello? My mother's voice filled the room. June, it's over. Either you stop this madness, or I tell everyone why you really let Athena control you all these years. There was a sharp intake of breath. You wouldn't. Try me. Our daughter is 5 months pregnant, and you're letting your sister destroy her life, just like you let her destroy yours. That's different, is it? Tell her about the money, June. Tell her what Athena's been holding over your head for 27 years. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Mom, the money was supposed to be yours, she finally whispered. Your grandmother left it for you, but there were medical bills after I lost the baby. Athena offered to help, but then she held it over me. Said if I ever went against her wishes, she'd tell everyone how I stole your inheritance. Jack was already taking notes. How much money are we talking about? Almost $500,000. The room spun. I grabbed the wastebasket just in time as morning sickness, apparently an all-day occurrence now, hit hard. That's blackmail, Jack said when I'd recovered, and now we have it recorded. My father helped me sit up. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have said something years ago. Why now? I asked my mother, still on speaker. Why let her do this? Because she promised to make it right. Said if you gave the baby to Kinley, she'd forgive the debt. Said it was God's way of balancing the scales. And you believed her? My father's voice cracked with disbelief. I believed she'd leave our daughter alone. Mom was crying now, but she just keeps pushing. And now with the gallery, I can't do this anymore. I choose my daughter. Jack leaned forward. Mrs. Stanley, would you be willing to put that in writing? All of it? Yes, she said firmly. And I'll testify if needed. I should have protected you, Natalia. I'm so sorry. After she hung up, Jack was practically glowing. This changes everything. Financial coercion, blackmail, interference with business. We're not just looking at restraining orders anymore. We're looking at criminal charges. My phone buzzed. Aunt Athena. You think you've won? Wait until the judge hears about your mental state, your unstable income, the men you've dated. Speaking of men, my father interrupted, reading over my shoulder, maybe we should tell everyone about Thomas. Who's Thomas? I asked. Kinley's real father. He met my shocked stare. Athena's not the only one with secrets. The timing of her pregnancy, well, let's just say Uncle Miles might be interested in a paternity test. Jack's eyes widened. Mr. Fletcher, you've been holding out on me. I kept quiet to protect Kinley. But now? He shook his head. All bets are off. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Kinley. Mom's crying. Dad's yelling. What's happening? I showed the message to Jack, who nodded. Tell her to come to my office, alone. It's time she learned the truth about everything. As I typed the response, another wave of nausea hit. Or maybe it was fear. What if this destroys them? They destroyed themselves, my father said gently. Sometimes family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about who stands with you when everyone else stands against you. Jack started organizing papers into files. The hearing's in 3 days. Once Kinley knows everything, once your mother's statement is filed, he smiled grimly. Let's just say Athena's house of cards is about to come down. I felt my baby kick. Stronger now, like they were saying, fight on, Mom. Delaney had bought me a fetal Doppler, and every night I listened to that steady heartbeat, reminding myself what I was fighting for. One more thing, Jack said as I got up to leave. The gallery owner, she wants to reschedule your show, says she's never letting anyone bully her artists again. I smiled, touching my growing bump. Tell her I'll be there. Me and my baby both. My father hugged me tight. That's my girl. Now let's go show them what happens when they mess with a Fletcher. For the first time in months, I felt truly powerful. They thought they could break me, but instead, they'd only revealed their own cracks. And through those cracks, the truth was finally shining through. The conference room in Jack's office felt too small for all the tension it held. Kinley sat across from me, her face pale as she listened to the recordings one by one. My mother's confession about the money, Aunt Athena's threats to the gallery owner, the conversation about Thomas. When Jack finally stopped the playback, Kinley looked like she might faint. This can't be true, she whispered. My mother wouldn't. There's more, my father said gently, sliding a manila envelope across the table. DNA test results. I had them done last week. Kinley's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Does he know? Miles found out this morning, Jack said. He's already filed for divorce. A sob escaped her throat. All this time, she's been lying to everyone? She's been controlling everyone, I corrected, using secrets and shame to manipulate us all. The nursery, Kinley said suddenly. She's the one who insisted we set it up, said it would prove our commitment to the judge. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. I'm so sorry, Natalia. I got so caught up in what I wanted, what Mom said I deserved. You're as much a victim as anyone, I said softly. But Kinley, this has to stop, she nodded, wiping her eyes. What do you need me to do? Jack pulled out a statement he'd prepared. Sign this. Testify at tomorrow's hearing. Tell the truth about how your mother orchestrated all of this. She'll never forgive me. No, my father agreed, but you'll forgive yourself. As Kinley read through the statement, my phone buzzed. Aunt Athena. Emergency family meeting. Now, your mother has some explaining to do. I showed the message to Jack, who smiled grimly. Perfect timing. Everyone ready? We arrived at my parents' house to find Aunt Athena pacing the living room, Uncle Miles sitting stone-faced in the corner, and my mother standing by the fireplace, looking stronger than I'd seen her in years. You, Aunt Athena spat when she saw me. This is all your fault. No, my mother said firmly, it's yours, and I'm done covering for you. After everything I've done for you, the money was my daughter's inheritance that you used to blackmail me, Mom finished. Just like you used Thomas to blackmail Miles into staying quiet all these years. Uncle Miles stood up. 27 years, Athena. 27 years of lies. I did it for our family. Aunt Athena's voice rose hysterically. Everything I did was to keep us together. Together? Kinley stepped forward. You tried to steal my cousin's baby. You destroyed my father's trust. You've been lying to me my entire life. I was protecting you. No, I said, recording everything on my phone. You were controlling us, but it's over now. Aunt Athena's face contorted. You think you've won? Wait until I tell the judge about your father's gambling debts, about your mother's depression, about what? Jack stepped into the room. About how you've systematically abused and manipulated this family for decades? Please, tell the judge everything. I'm sure they'd love to hear about the blackmail, the fraud, the harassment. She lunged for my phone, but my father caught her arm. Don't, he warned. You've done enough damage. The hearing's tomorrow, Jack continued calmly. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw all claims to Natalia's child. You're going to sign a statement admitting to your actions. And you're going to stay away from this family. Or what? Or I file criminal charges, my mother said, for the inheritance fraud, for the blackmail, for everything. Aunt Athena looked around the room, seeing nothing but resolved faces. Her shoulders sagged. You're all against me? After everything I've sacrificed? You sacrificed us, Kinley said quietly. All of us. And now you're losing everything because of it. The papers are ready, Jack said, placing his briefcase on the coffee table. Sign them now, or we'll see you in court tomorrow. As Aunt Athena reached for the pen, her hand trembling, I felt my baby kick again. This time it felt like applause. I hope you're happy, she said as she signed. You've destroyed this family. No, I replied, touching my growing belly. We freed it. Later, as we left the house, Kinley caught my arm. The nursery. Would you like it? All the things we bought? They should go to the baby they were meant for. I hugged her, feeling the first real step toward healing. Come shopping with me instead. Let's pick out new things together. Start fresh. She smiled through her tears. I'd like that. The war was over. Tomorrow's hearing would just make it official. But as I drove home, I realized something. Sometimes you have to break apart what's broken to build something stronger in its place. The courthouse hallway buzzed with tension. Despite Aunt Athena signing the papers yesterday, Jack insisted we follow through with the hearing. We need this on official record, he'd said. No room for backtracking. I sat between my parents, Delaney squeezing my hand on one side while my father kept his protective arm around my shoulders. At 6 months pregnant, my baby was particularly active today, as if sensing the importance of the moment. All rise, the bailiff called. Judge Martinez surveyed the packed courtroom, her eyes lingering on my visible pregnancy before settling on Jack. Counsel, I understand there have been some developments. Yes, Your Honor. Jack stood, straightening his tie. We have signed statements from all parties, but given the severity of the situation, we believe it's crucial to have testimony on record. Proceed. My mother went first, her voice steady as she detailed years of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. Uncle Miles followed, confirming the DNA test results and Aunt Athena's decades of deception. Each testimony felt like another brick falling from the wall of lies that had surrounded our family. Then it was Kinley's turn. Mom told me I deserved Natalia's baby, she said, wiping tears. Said God meant for this child to be mine. She had me believe Natalia was being selfish, that taking her baby was the right thing to do. I let myself believe it because I wanted it so badly. And now? The judge asked. Now I know the truth, that my mother used my pain to hurt others, that she tried to steal my cousin's child to punish her mother for something that happened before we were born. Kinley turned to face me. I'm so sorry, Natalia. I should have protected you, not helped hurt you. When it was my turn to speak, I felt surprisingly calm. Your Honor, I'm an artist. I create things for a living. But this baby? I touched my stomach. This is my masterpiece. My aunt tried to steal that from me. She used my cousin's pain, my mother's guilt, and our family's love against us. She lies! Aunt Athena shot up from her seat. This ungrateful girl has turned my whole family against me. I was trying to help, to give this baby a proper home. Mrs. Stanley, the judge warned, sit down or I'll have you removed. You don't understand, Aunt Athena continued, her voice rising hysterically. I lost my baby, my real baby. Then I had to watch my sister have another chance while I raised another man's child. It wasn't fair. None of this is fair. The courtroom fell silent, except for Aunt Athena's ragged breathing. Mrs. Stanley, Judge Martinez said quietly, life's unfairness doesn't give you the right to destroy others. Your actions show a disturbing pattern of manipulation and abuse. She turned to me. Miss Fletcher, what do you want from this court? I stood, one hand protectively over my baby. I want my aunt to get help, real help, not just prayers and denial. I want legal protection for my child, and I want my family to have a chance to heal. All of us, including Kinley and my aunt, if she's willing to try. The judge nodded, then spent several minutes reviewing the documents before her. Based on the evidence and testimony presented, this court orders the following. A permanent restraining order against Athena Stanley, preventing any contact with Natalia Fletcher or her child. Mandatory counseling for Mrs. Stanley before any modification of this order can be considered. And, she paused, looking directly at Aunt Athena, a criminal investigation into the financial fraud and blackmail allegations will be recommended to the district attorney's office. Aunt Athena collapsed into her chair while Uncle Miles quietly left the courtroom. Kinley moved to sit beside me, taking my free hand. Additionally, the judge continued, this court recognizes Natalia Fletcher's full and uncontested rights to her unborn child. Any further attempts to interfere with these rights will result in immediate criminal charges. Do all parties understand? The chorus of "Yes, Your Honor" was interrupted by Aunt Athena's quiet voice. I just wanted to make things right, she whispered, to fix what was broken. The only broken thing here, my mother said standing, was what you did to this family. But we're fixing that now, without you. As we left the courthouse, Delaney hugged me tight. It's really over. Not quite, I said, watching Kinley hesitate by her car. Hey, cousin, still up for that shopping trip? Her face lit up. Really? Really, but this time we're buying aunt stuff, not mom stuff. She laughed through her tears, and for the first time in months, it felt like family again. Different, broken, but healing. My phone buzzed. A message from the gallery. Show opens next week. Theme, rebirth, ready? I looked at my family, the ones who stood by me, the ones finding their way back, even the empty spaces left by those who chose pride over love, and knew exactly what I would paint. Ready, I typed back. More than ready. It's perfect, Delaney whispered, standing beside me in the gallery. The centerpiece of my show was a massive triptych, 3 panels showing a family tree being torn apart by storms, then growing back stronger, with new branches reaching toward the light. You really put them in the painting, Kinley said, pointing to the subtle figures woven into the branches. All of us. Even her. I nodded toward the darker sections, where Aunt Athena's silhouette lingered in the shadows. She's part of the story, too. The gallery was packed for opening night. My father stood proudly by the entrance, greeting guests. My mother moved between the paintings, explaining the symbolism to interested buyers. Even Uncle Miles had come, standing quietly in the corner with a glass of wine. Sold, the gallery owner announced, placing a red dot beside the triptych. To an anonymous buyer. Anonymous? I raised an eyebrow at Jack, who was trying too hard to look innocent. What? I'm a lawyer. I appreciate good art, he grinned, especially art that tells the truth. A commotion at the entrance drew our attention. Aunt Athena stood there, looking smaller somehow, more fragile. She's violating the restraining order, Jack muttered, reaching for his phone. Wait, I said, touching his arm. Let me handle this. I approached her carefully, noting the papers clutched in her hands. You're not supposed to be here, I said quietly. I know. She held out the papers with trembling hands. But I needed you to have these. It's the trust fund paperwork. Your inheritance. I've signed everything back over to you, with interest. That's not why you came. She looked at my belly, now 8 months round. No, I started therapy. Real therapy, not just church counseling. My therapist says I need to make amends, but more than that, I need to face what I did. To everyone. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Not just for what I did to you, but for what I did to Kinley, to your mother, to everyone. She wiped her eyes. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I'm trying to change. Kinley appeared beside me. Mom? I'll go, Aunt Athena said quickly. I just needed to deliver these papers. Stay, I found myself saying. Just stay on the other side of the room. This is a show about healing, after all. She nodded gratefully and moved to a quiet corner, while Kinley squeezed my hand in thanks. The evening continued. Art sold. Champagne flowed. Sparkling cider for me. And slowly, carefully, something shifted in the air. Uncle Miles briefly spoke with Aunt Athena. My mother showed Kinley photos of her own pregnancy with me. My father told embarrassing stories about my first art show in kindergarten. You did this, Delaney said, gesturing to the room. Not just the art. You brought them back together. Not all the way, I corrected. Some breaks can't be fully mended. But they can be reformed into something new, Jack added, appearing with another buyer. As the evening wound down, I felt the baby kick particularly hard. Someone's a critic, I joked, then gasped as another pain hit. Natalia, my mother was instantly beside me. Is it time? No, it's too early. But even as I spoke, I felt liquid running down my leg. The gallery erupted into action. Jack called my doctor. Delaney grabbed my hospital bag from the car. My father cleared a path to the exit. I'll drive, Kinley offered, then hesitated. Unless you want your mom. Both of you, I said through gritted teeth. I want both of you. As they helped me to the car, I caught a glimpse of Aunt Athena watching from the gallery window, her hand pressed against the glass. Our eyes met briefly, and I gave her a small nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. Recognition that even the darkest parts of our story led us here. Ready to be a mom? Delaney asked as another contraction hit. I looked at my support system, my fierce best friend, my protective lawyer, my reformed cousin, my strengthened parents, even my healing extended family, and smiled through the pain. I already am, I said. I became a mom the moment I decided to fight for this baby. Everything since then has just been proving it. The gallery lights dimmed behind us as we drove away, but I knew the art would remain, telling our story to anyone who looked closely enough. A story of family, of fighting for what matters, of breaking and healing and growing stronger. And now, as new pain ripped through me, it was time for the next chapter to begin.
I'm Calla. On my parents' anniversary, I gave them a gift. Something meaningful, something that cost me years of hard work. They laughed, called it useless, until they saw the apartment deed. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing they'd been cutting me out long before that dinner. Bit by bit, erasing my name from family photos, stealing my future, even forging documents to take what was left of my father's legacy. So how did it get that far? How does a daughter become a stranger in her own home? Let me tell you what really happened. Because it didn't start at that dinner. It started the day my dad never came home. The invitation came through a short, impersonal text. No greeting, no warmth. Just, 15th anniversary dinner, La Mirabelle, 8 p.m. sharp. Be decent. I stared at the screen for a full minute, reading it over again as if some part of me expected a second message to follow. Maybe a softer tone, hope you'll come, or even, dare I dream, we'd love to see you. but there was nothing else. That was Dolores' style. Straight to the point, dressed up in silk and sequins, but emotionally threadbare. I didn't reply, just marked the date on my calendar and closed my phone. Not because I wanted to go, but because I needed to see it. The final performance, the last show. Some part of me craved the closure that had been withheld for years. La Mirabelle was the kind of restaurant that screamed elegance to people who'd never actually experienced it. Faux crystal chandeliers, oversized wine glasses, and menus written entirely in French with prices that were more about status than substance. I walked in wearing a classic navy dress, nothing flashy, just clean lines and quiet grace. I didn't need sparkle. I was there to watch them shine and burn out. They were already seated in a private dining room at the back, laughing too loudly, sipping wine like it was celebration and not spectacle. Dolores sat at the head of the table, glittering in silver sequins that caught the light and demanded attention. Gideon beside her, red-cheeked from too much Cabernet. Lyra and Bran flanked them, looking smug and overpolished. Delora looked up, gave me a quick once-over, then smiled with razor-thin lips. "Oh, you actually came." She leaned toward Lyra and added just loud enough, "I figured she'd send one of those Hallmark cards again." I pulled out the small box from my bag, a gift wrapped in minimalist paper with a dark velvet ribbon. Subtle, understated, just like the life I had built. I handed it to her with both hands, steady. "Happy anniversary." She took it like it might bite. "It's tiny," she muttered, already laughing. "Well, let's see what our little prodigal daughter thinks is worthy of our 15th. She tore the ribbon with the kind of dramatic flair she'd saved for a stage play, flipped the lid off, and stared inside. Silence, for a moment. Then, laughter. Her head tilted back. "A deed?" she scoffed. "To what?" "A storage unit?" Gideon chuckled. "Probably to a one-bedroom over a liquor store." Lyra leaned in. "Is this a joke?" Bran didn't say a word, but the smirk on his face did enough damage. I stayed calm. "It's a luxury apartment in Cherry Creek, fully paid off. It was meant for you, but I've changed the name on the deed." You could feel it, the shift, a ripple under the skin of the room. Their faces froze, not in awe, not in gratitude, but in discomfort, in disbelief that I could possibly be someone now, without them. Dolores' eyes narrowed. "Why would you give that to me?" "I thought you might appreciate it," I said, "until I remembered who you are." She slammed the box shut. "Don't pull this holier-than-thou crap, Calla." "You think success erases how you left us?" Gideon added. "You've got a big mouth for someone who disappeared when things got tough." I didn't flinch. "I left when you made it clear I didn't belong." I stood up slowly, pushed my chair back without a sound. "Enjoy the dinner." I didn't wait for them to stop me. No one did. I walked out, the velvet box still on the table, the ribbon dangling like a loose thread from a life I no longer wanted to stitch myself into. That night, my phone lit up nonstop. Delora. "I may have overreacted. We should talk." Lyra. "Hey, about that internship thing you mentioned. I've been thinking maybe we could start over." Bran. "Look, family fights. But it's stupid to let this get in the way of helping each other." I blocked them all. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. Because for the first time, I wasn't that girl at the table anymore. I was done performing. This wasn't the beginning. This was the ending I needed to begin again. I didn't always know how to walk away. But it started the day my father never came home. I was 13. It was a Tuesday, I think. The kind of day no one would remember unless something terrible happened. And something did. That morning, my dad kissed me on the forehead like he always did, the scent of his aftershave lingering as he walked out the door. "Be good, sweetheart," he said with a wink, keys jingling in his hand. I smiled, still clutching my cereal spoon. Dolores sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up, didn't say goodbye. He hesitated for a second, then left without a word from her. I remember thinking it was strange, just a flicker of unease, quickly brushed away. By lunch, he was gone. They pulled me out of math class. The principal's face looked like she'd been practicing her expression in the mirror. "Your mother is here," she said softly. Her voice was syrupy, too sweet. Delora sat in the office chair, legs crossed, makeup immaculate. Not a single smudge under her eyes. Her tone was flat. "Your father passed away at work. Heart attack." That was it. No hug, no tears. Just a hand on my shoulder, barely a pat. My whole world cracked in that moment, and she didn't even flinch. That night, I couldn't sleep. The walls in our house were paper thin. Delora didn't care. She never lowered her voice when it mattered. I was on the stairs when I heard her talking to someone on the phone. Laura, I think. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I didn't have to. "Honestly, this might be for the best," she said, her voice hushed but sharp. "Being a widow sounds a hell of a lot better than being divorced." My breath caught. "No lawyers, no splitting assets. I keep everything." Then she laughed. Laughed. "Of course I'll cry at the funeral. I've already picked the dress." My stomach twisted. I covered my mouth with both hands, afraid a sound might escape. In that moment, something inside me shifted. A thread snapped, not loudly, but with quiet finality. The funeral was exactly what she promised. Delora wore a black dress that hugged her like she was on the runway, not in mourning. People kept coming up to her, saying how strong she was, how brave. "She's keeping it together so well," one woman whispered. "She's always been the practical one," said another. No one noticed that she didn't cry. Not once. Not even when they lowered the casket. But Ruth did. Aunt Ruth stood near the back, lips pressed tight, arms crossed. She watched Delora with narrowed eyes and didn't say a word to her the entire day. 4 months later, Gideon appeared. He came over for dinner, dressed in some stiff blazer like he was there for a job interview, not to meet the daughter of his new conquest. Delora greeted him with a laugh I hadn't heard since before Dad died. Lyra and Bran were with him, smiling like they'd just won a prize. The smell of roast chicken filled the house. Real food, actual effort. She hadn't cooked like that in years, not even when Dad was alive. That night, the table was full, the lights were warm, and I felt like a guest in my own home. "Calla," Delora said, her voice sugary sweet, "we have an announcement." I already knew. I could see it in the way she touched Gideon's arm, how her eyes gleamed with some twisted kind of victory. "We're getting married!" Everyone clapped. I forced a smile so tight it hurt. "That's great! Congratulations," Gideon looked at me like he was sizing up a stranger. Lyra beamed across the table and said, "We'll be like sisters." I wanted to scream. Instead, I picked at my potatoes and said nothing. From that night on, things moved quickly. Too quickly. She stopped mentioning Dad's name altogether. Gideon's photo joined the mantel where my father's used to sit. I remember asking once, quietly, cautiously, "What did you do with Dad's picture?" Delora didn't even look up. "We're starting a new chapter, Calla. Don't be so dramatic." She replaced the past like changing out furniture. Lyra got my old stereo. Bran took over the garage for his video games. Gideon's truck filled the driveway. Their lives took up space until there was none left for mine. And still, no one saw it but me. They thought she was rebuilding. I knew she was erasing. It started with a wall. One afternoon, I came home from school and stopped short in the hallway. The picture frames that used to hold photos of me and my dad. Our trip to the lake, the science fair he cheered me through, that blurry one where I had chocolate all over my face and he was laughing, were gone. In their place were new frames, larger, shinier. A staged family portrait of Delora, Gideon, Lyra, and Bran, all dressed in matching colors. One of Bran at his football game. Another of Lyra holding a trophy I didn't know she'd won. I stood there for minutes, frozen. Like if I waited long enough, the old pictures would reappear, They didn't. That night at dinner, I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. Where are the photos of Dad and me? Delora didn't miss a bite of her salad. I'm updating the house, she said. It's time we moved forward. You should too. Gideon nodded, as if it made perfect sense. No use living in the past, he added, reaching for his wine. But those weren't just pictures, I whispered. They were him. Delora sighed, setting down her fork. Calla, don't be so sentimental. Everyone loses people. It doesn't mean you stop living. From that day forward, I stopped asking questions. A few weeks later, my playroom, my sanctuary filled with books, old board games, and half-finished puzzles, was emptied. Lyra stood in the middle of it, with paint samples and brushes, grinning. This is going to be my studio, she said. Mom says it's time I have my own space. I stood in the doorway, heart pounding. That was my room, Lyra shrugged. You don't even use it anymore. And besides, Mom said you need to learn to share. Bran got the sunroom, the one Dad promised we'd turn into a reading nook. He turned it into a gaming cave, the door always locked, snacks spilling onto the carpet. When I tried to talk to Delora about it, she barely looked up. Don't be selfish, Calla. They're adjusting, and we need to make them feel welcome. I started eating dinner in my room. One morning, the family calendar had something scribbled in pink glitter pen. Lyra's party. I stared at the date. It was mine, my birthday. I waited all day for someone to say something. Anything. A happy birthday, a card, even a pat on the back. When I got home from school, the house was filled with balloons. Streamers dangled from the ceiling. A cake sat on the counter that read, "To our shining star, Lyra." Delora turned to me, mid-toast, smiling like a politician. Oh, Calla, honey, I completely forgot. Yours is today too, right? Or is it tomorrow? People laughed, assuming it was all in good fun. I slipped away before the candles were lit. That night, I found a cupcake in the fridge, left over from some store-bought pack. I lit a match from the junk drawer, stuck it in the frosting, and sang "Happy Birthday" under my breath. That was the night I started writing. I found a plain spiral notebook and tucked it under my mattress. I wrote to Dad like he could still hear me. Told him about the empty frames, the quiet dinners, the way it felt to be erased while still living under the same roof. They took your face off the walls, I wrote, but I still see you. I still hear your laugh in the mornings, even when the house is silent. Over time, the entries became less about them and more about me. What I felt, what I feared, what I hoped no one would ever know I hoped. I stopped speaking unless I had to. I didn't slam doors or cry where they could hear. I just floated, like a shadow in the corners of a house that used to be mine. If they won't see me, I wrote once, I'll make sure the world does. And from then on, I did my best to fade from their lives, while quietly building the one they never expected I could. I thought keeping quiet would keep me safe. But silence didn't shield me. It only made it easier for them to twist the story. The first time it really hit me was during Lyra's senior art fundraiser. Delora had given her an envelope with several $100s to submit for her materials and competition fees. The envelope vanished the same day. By that evening, I was standing in the kitchen, backpack still on one shoulder, when Delora stormed in like a hurricane. "Where is it?" she demanded. "Where's what?" "Don't play innocent, Calla," she snapped, pointing a finger like a prosecutor in court. "The envelope, the one with Lyra's tuition money." My heart dropped. "I didn't take anything." "Of course you didn't," Lyra said, arms folded, eyes gleaming. "Just like you didn't throw out my brushes last month." "That wasn't me!" Delora crossed her arms. "Just admit it. You've always resented her. I'm not blind, Calla." I looked at Gideon, who barely glanced up from the TV. Bran stayed upstairs. No one cared. No one even asked if there was any proof. The next morning, Delora still hadn't calmed down. "You know what hurts more than the money?" she said, stirring her coffee like it personally offended her. knowing I can't even trust my own daughter. The envelope turned up 3 days later, in Lyra's art bin, folded under some sketches. No apology, no correction. Delora just waved a hand. "She's under a lot of pressure. You're strong, Calla. She's fragile." That sentence landed like a stone. Not because it was cruel, but because it was deliberate. They wanted me to swallow it and move on. So I did. But a piece of me lodged it somewhere deep, where the things that never got resolved went to rot. At school, things didn't get better. They got darker. It started with whispers. A few snickers in the hallway. I noticed people looking at me, then looking away too quickly. Then someone in English class said, "Didn't think you were that kind of girl, Calla." I didn't know what they meant until I saw it. An Instagram profile with my full name, my face, and posts I'd never made. Bitter captions. Photos that were edited to look suggestive, like I was desperate for attention. A message thread with someone I didn't even know, full of flirty replies I never sent. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I knew who it was before I even asked. Lyra had that kind of creativity. Twisted, personal, effective. I found her in the school parking lot. "Why?" I asked. She tilted her head, smiling. "Maybe you should ask yourself why people believe it's you." I showed Delora the account. Her response? A shrug. "It's just teenage drama. Everyone goes through this. Grow up." "Someone is impersonating me." "Oh, please. You're acting like it's identity theft." "Because it is." She rolled her eyes. "If you spent half as much time fixing your attitude as you do blaming your sister, maybe things would be different." That's when I stopped trying to explain. My voice didn't carry weight in that house, or anywhere else they touched. At night, I wrote more. I filled pages. Not just letters to Dad anymore, but journal entries. Rage laid out in neat cursive. "I didn't deserve this," I wrote. "But I'll let it mold me. Fire doesn't just destroy, it forges." I no longer expected fairness. I didn't crave approval. I started letting go of the idea that anything I did would change them. So I stopped defending myself. And I started planning a life where I wouldn't need to. It arrived in a thin, white envelope, the kind most people wouldn't even glance at twice. But I knew what it was the moment I saw the university logo in the top corner. My hands trembled as I peeled it open, heart thudding like it hadn't dared to in years. "Dear Calla Morgan, we are pleased to offer you a full academic scholarship." I had to read it twice just to believe it. I sat down on my bed, letter in hand, eyes wide, jaw slack. For the first time in what felt like forever, something was mine, earned, not given. A door cracked open, leading somewhere that didn't have their voices in the next room. I didn't tell anyone that night. I folded the letter carefully, placed it in a book on my shelf, and waited for the right moment. I knew they wouldn't be happy for me, but I hoped, some small, stubborn part of me still hoped, they might at least pretend. A few nights later, during dinner, I brought it up. Everyone was in their usual places, chewing, scrolling, ignoring. "I got into West Virginia University," I said, voice steady, "with a full ride." Delora didn't even blink. "For what?" "Business management." Silence. "Who's paying for your dorm?" she said finally, wiping her mouth. "Because we're already budgeting for Lyra's design program." "I told you, it's a full scholarship. Housing, tuition, books." She laughed. "Those scholarships always come with strings. And you? You're not ready for that kind of pressure." "It's not your decision." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" Before I could answer, she reached across the table, snatched the letter from my hand. She didn't even read it. She tore it down the center, slow and deliberate, like she was slicing me out of her future. "I'm doing you a favor," she said, tossing the halves onto my plate. "Dreams are dangerous when they don't fit your reality." Bran gave a quiet chuckle. Lyra barely looked up. I stared at the pieces of my future, now limp under a smear of mashed potatoes, and something inside me snapped. But it didn't shatter. It crystallized. I stood up. "I won't forget this." Delora smiled, smug. Good. Then maybe you'll stop wasting everyone's time. That weekend, I packed a bag and took the bus to Ruth's cottage. She opened the door before I even knocked. I was wondering when you'd come. We didn't speak much at first. She poured tea. I sat at the kitchen table, trying to hold it all together. I told her what happened, how Delora tore the letter like it meant nothing. Ruth didn't gasp or rage. She nodded, got up, and disappeared into the back room. She returned with an old manila envelope, yellowed at the corners, thick with something heavy inside. Your father gave me this 3 weeks before he passed, she said, placing it in front of me. He told me to keep it safe, just in case. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a bank statement and a letter in my dad's handwriting. The account had my name on it. The savings were more than enough. He worried about Delora, Ruth said quietly. Said she'd been acting different, cold, secretive. He didn't want your future tied to anyone but yourself. Tears filled my eyes, but they didn't fall. I held the letter like it was life itself. They tried to chain me to that house, I whispered, but my father built a key and left it with someone who actually loved me. That night, I stayed in the guest room. The next day, I used Ruth's address to start applying again, this time in secret. It wasn't just about leaving anymore. It was about finally living. They waited until I was barely a month from graduation, as if they needed to remind me one more time that this was their house, their rules, and I had only ever been passing through. Gideon called it a family meeting, but I knew better the moment I stepped into the living room. He was standing beside the coffee table with a folder in his hand. Delora sat stiffly on the love seat, arms crossed. Lyra was scrolling through her phone, but smirking like she already knew the punchline. Sit, Gideon said, voice clipped. I didn't move. He opened the folder. This is a basic asset reassignment form. Legal, straightforward, just a formality. I looked at the header, my name, printed in bold letters, and then the phrase, relinquishment of inheritance claims. What is this? I asked. Delora kept her eyes fixed on the wall. Gideon answered without pause. We're just protecting the house. There's been some legal restructuring. You're 18 now. This is about being responsible. I'm not signing that. His tone sharpened. This isn't optional. You're either with this family or you're out. Lyra chuckled under her breath. She's just mad she won't get a piece. I stared at Delora. She said nothing, not a word. I should have walked away. I should have called Ruth, or a lawyer, or screamed. But I didn't. My hands trembled as I picked up the pen. It wasn't consent. It was exhaustion. I signed. The next week, Delora mailed out the family Christmas cards. She didn't show me the final design. I saw it when one of my teachers brought it to school. Look who's all grown up, she'd said cheerfully, handing me the glossy postcard. It read, Happy Holidays from the Vance family, Gideon, Delora, Lyra, and Bran. No mention of me, not even in the fine print. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled politely and slid it into my bag. At home, I found a whole stack of them in the trash, the extras. They'd ordered 100. When I asked Delora about it, she didn't flinch. You've made it pretty clear you're not really part of this family anymore. One of my aunts left a voicemail. Sweetheart, did you move? We got the card, but your name's not on it. Delora's response? Calla's doing her own thing. She's barely here. She said it like I was a guest who overstayed their welcome. That night, I stood in my room, staring at the walls that used to have photos, the drawers that no longer had meaning. I pulled out the old suitcase from under my bed and began packing in silence. One sweatshirt, a few books, the planner I never let anyone see, a folder of scholarship applications sent from Ruth's address. They thought they could push me out. I was just making it official. I whispered aloud, they erased me from their pictures, but I'll frame my own life. No one heard me, but that didn't matter. The last thing I packed wasn't for school. It was a bracelet I wore as a kid. Silver, worn down, with my initials barely legible on the clasp. I placed it in the top drawer of Dad's old desk. Not as a gift, not as a goodbye, but as a mark that I had existed there. I closed the drawer slowly. "I'm not the one who left," I said quietly. "You pushed me out." The lawyer slid the folder across the table, his expression unreadable but respectful. "All right, Ms. Morgan, everything's in order. Once you sign here, the property is officially transferred." I didn't hesitate. With one stroke of a pen, I gave Aunt Ruth the apartment in Cherry Creek. 3 bedrooms, high ceilings, granite countertops, and more peace than I'd ever known under Delora's roof. "She stood by me when no one else did," I said softly. "She deserves a home." He nodded, gathering the documents. "You understand this is permanent?" "Yes," I replied. "That's the point." When I stepped outside, the Denver air was crisp and dry, the kind of cold that woke you up without biting too deep. I took a breath so full, it felt like my lungs were claiming space for the first time in years. Back at Ruth's, she was already pouring tea. Chamomile, her version of a toast. "You sure about this?" she asked, though her eyes already knew the answer. "She's going to come knocking," she added, setting my cup down. "She always does when she starts slipping." I wrapped my hands around the mug. "Let her." And like clockwork, she came. 2 days later, a loud, frantic pounding shook the front door. Not a knock, a demand. Ruth glanced out the window, then at me. "It's her!" I didn't move. Ruth walked to the door, opened it halfway. Delora was already mid-sentence. "I need to speak to my daughter. This has gone too far." Ruth kept her tone even. "Calla is an adult. You don't just get to appear now and expect access." Delora didn't even blink. "I want the account, the money from Franklin. It belongs to this family." "No," Ruth said. "It belongs to Calla. Your husband left it for her, and you knew that." "She wouldn't even have a future without me," Delora snapped. "I carried her for 9 months. I fed her. I gave her a roof." Ruth's voice didn't rise, but her words cut clean. "And then you used her pain as leverage. That's not parenting. That's possession." Delora pushed past her, stepping into the living room like she still had a right to claim the air. I stood up. "If you cared even a fraction as much about me as you do that money," I said, "maybe we wouldn't be standing here." Delora's face twisted. "You owe me everything." "I owe you nothing," I said. "You gave me life, and then tried to erase it." She scoffed, turning to Ruth. "You turned her against me." "I didn't have to," Ruth said. "You did that all on your own." Delora's voice cracked, but the anger held steady. "You're throwing away your family!" I met her eyes. "You made sure I never had one." A long silence followed, just the sound of the clock ticking above the mantel. Ruth took out her phone. "If you don't leave now, I'll be calling the police." Delora's jaw clenched. She looked at me one last time, as if expecting me to cave. But I didn't flinch. She turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. Ruth locked it, then looked at me with something that felt like warmth and sorrow all at once. "You're safe here," she said quietly. "You always were, always will be." I nodded, still frozen in place, but I knew she wasn't done, and that the final mask would break soon. The clinking of forks and the hum of fake laughter still rang in my ears as I replayed the moment at La Mirabelle, not with regret, but with clarity. Delora had reached for the box like it was something to toss in her purse and forget. The wrapping was neat, elegant. I'd spent time choosing the ribbon, tying it like I cared. I didn't, not for her, but for the version of me that used to try so hard to matter. When she opened it and saw only a folded piece of paper, her smirk cracked. "What is this? A gift card? Did you seriously bring something this cheap to my anniversary?" I looked straight at her. "It's the deed to a luxury apartment downtown. You were right, it is too much. You don't deserve it." The silence fell fast and heavy. Lyra's jaw tensed. Bran's smirk dropped. Gideon didn't even flinch, just kept cutting his steak like the room hadn't chilled over. Peter raised his glass slightly, like maybe he thought it was a joke. Dolores stared at me, eyes wide with a fury she couldn't make pretty. "You think money makes you better than this family?" I smiled. "Number, but it proved I never needed yours." And then I stood up. I thanked the waitress, left the box in the center of the table, and walked out. No one followed me. No one said a word. Outside, the air was sharp, a bite of cold across my skin, but it felt good. Clean. I expected to feel grief, or guilt, or some pit in my stomach that reminded me I was walking away from blood. But I didn't. I felt weightless, like I'd finally returned everything they'd ever handed me: blame, silence, erasure, all wrapped in a bow and placed right back in their laps. That night, the messages started. First, Delora. I may have overreacted. You always were dramatic, but we should talk. Then Lyra. Hey, about that internship thing? You mentioned it at some point, right? I'm thinking it could look good on my resume. Bran followed. Look, we've had our issues, but family's family. I need a reference. Just write something basic. I read them all while sipping coffee in Ruth's kitchen. She was humming some old tune, watering her succulents like it was just another Tuesday. And it was. For me, anyway. I didn't reply. The next day, the messages came again. Lyra. You're being petty. Delora. You wouldn't even have that apartment if not for me. Bran. You're not better than us, Calla. And finally, Delora. You owe us. After everything we did for you. I blocked every number. Then I posted one photo to my private Instagram. Just a shot of the sky from my apartment balcony, the sun melting into pink and orange against the skyline. Caption: Peace isn't always quiet. Sometimes it roars. That photo said everything I didn't need to explain. That evening, I told Ruth everything: the dinner, the messages, the silence that came after. She didn't interrupt, just poured tea into our matching mugs and waited until I exhaled. You didn't just survive them, she said, eyes soft. You outgrew them. I nodded. I'm not angry anymore. Good, she said, lifting her cup, because this toast isn't to revenge, it's to release. We clinked mugs gently, and as we sipped, I realized I wasn't aching anymore. I wasn't hiding or hoping or trying to fix what was broken before I was even born. I had finally stopped asking to be loved by people who never knew how. And still, part of me wondered, could I ever truly heal from what they didn't give? My mornings are quiet now. I wake to sunlight filtering through soft curtains, water the basil on my kitchen windowsill, and light a candle Ruth gave me from her favorite boutique, the one that smells like rain and honey. No noise, no tension, just the sound of my own breath and the ticking clock I picked out at a flea market last fall. It's a little crooked, a little chipped, but it works. I updated my resume last week and booked a solo weekend trip up to Boulder. A cabin, a trail, no Wi-Fi. I didn't post about it, didn't announce it. It wasn't for anyone else. These days, I keep things close. Not hidden, just sacred. I don't feel the need to prove anything anymore. My life isn't a performance. It's a place I live in fully. Occasionally, emails still come. From Delora. Subject lines like, "Let's talk," or "We're still family," or the last one, "Don't do this to me." They always start the same way, an apology so polished it squeaks. Then come the reminders, the guilt-laced questions. You can't just pretend we don't exist. After all I did, I still deserve to be part of your life. But I don't open them anymore. I don't need to. There's nothing in them I haven't already read between the lines for years. And not reading them, that's my choice now. On Saturday, I drove to Ruth's. Her garden looked like something out of a painting. All soft purples and deep greens and bursts of marigold. She was already pulling weeds when I arrived, sun hat on, a little dirt under her nails. "I brought the lemon bars," I called out. "You know the rules," she said. "No showing up empty-handed or with store-bought cookies." We laughed. The way we always do. We planted mint together. dug our fingers into the soil, and talked about everything and nothing. At one point, Ruth looked up at me, her face calm and kind. "You changed the story," she said. "You didn't just survive them, you rewrote the ending." I didn't expect the tears. They weren't sad. They just came, because she was right, and hearing it from her made it real. Later that night, back at my apartment, I sat down at my desk and opened a fresh notebook. I wrote a letter to Delora, not out of anger, not for revenge, just words that needed out. "I forgive you," I wrote, "but I no longer need you, and that is my freedom." I folded it and placed it in the bottom drawer. I won't send it. It's not for her. It's for me. Mira came by the next morning. She brought iced coffee and a travel guide. We curled up on my balcony, flipping through pages and circling destinations we might visit one day. Italy, Oregon, maybe even Japan. At one point, she asked if I missed them. I didn't lie. "Sometimes," I said, "but not in the way they think." She nodded, like she understood. I looked out at the skyline, soft clouds drifting over the city I'd rebuilt myself in. "Family isn't always who raised you," I said. "Sometimes it's who helped you rise." Mira reached over and squeezed my hand. There's peace in the silence. Not because I've forgotten the past, but because it no longer gets to win. Sometimes the hardest part isn't walking away. It's believing you're allowed to. I spent years thinking love had to hurt, that loyalty meant silence, and that being family meant enduring anything. But that's not true. What I've learned is this: you don't owe anyone a lifetime of pain just because they gave you your name. Healing doesn't always come with loud victories or grand gestures. Sometimes it's found in small things: a quiet apartment, a friend who stays, a garden full of second chances. It's in choosing peace over permission, and most of all, in choosing yourself, without apology. If you've ever felt erased, overlooked, or unloved by the very people who were supposed to protect you, let me say this clearly. You are not broken. You are becoming, and you get to define what family means to you. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who kept taking more than they gave? Or maybe you found your Ruth, someone who showed up when no one else did? Tell me your story. Drop a 1 in the comments if this video touched your heart, or let me know where you're watching from. I read every message. And hey, if this video wasn't for you, that's okay too. Let me know why. I'm here to listen. This space is for you, and for all of us learning how to heal together. And if you'd like more stories like this, ones that dive deep, hit home, and maybe even help you breathe a little easier, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Your next story might be the one you didn't know you needed. Until next time, keep choosing peace. You deserve it. I'm Amy. They told me it's just a reunion. But then I found out my sister's $80,000 party was paid for, with my trust fund. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding, a choice. They left me off the guest list. They said I was too sensitive. They said Celine deserved it more. But what hurt more than being left out was realizing I was never really in. You ever felt like the one holding a family together, only to find out they were cutting you loose the whole time? Because that's what happened to me. I was stirring a pot of risotto in my small Seattle kitchen when the text came through. My phone buzzed once on the counter. Just one buzz, like it didn't carry weight, like it wasn't going to gut me. Kaylin. "Hey, just a heads up. Guest list is tight. Hope you understand." I read it 3 times. I was standing there with a wooden spoon in my hand, steam fogging up my glasses, and I felt the floor shift under me. My brother. My only brother. His welcome back party. I wasn't invited. At first, I thought maybe he was joking. Kaylin had a dry sense of humor, sure, but this felt cold, final. Not even a sorry, not even a next time. Just hope you understand. The kind of text you send to someone you don't expect to be hurt. I put the spoon down, turned off the stove. I stared at that message like it might morph into something else if I waited long enough. Maybe he'd follow up. Maybe this was a mistake. It wasn't. I opened our chat history, years of it. Me cheering him on through boot camp, me sending care packages, me staying up late on patchy FaceTime calls from overseas, while he cried quietly and told me he wasn't sure he could handle another month. And now I was just off the list. I tapped call before I could overthink it. Not to him, to Dad. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, kiddo, what's going on?" "Kaylin texted me," I said, voice tight. "I'm not invited to the party?" There was a pause. Not long, just enough to let me know he'd already rehearsed the answer. "Oh, Amy," he sighed. "Don't make this a thing, okay? It's just a reunion." Just a reunion. That phrase made something inside me curl. "I'm his sister," I said. "How does that not qualify for a guest spot?" "It's Celine's planning it," Dad replied, brushing me off like lint. "She's been working hard, budget, space. You know how it goes." "Celine's planning it," I repeated, and somehow I didn't make the cut. "You know how tight things are. She had to prioritize." "Prioritize what?" I said, trying to stay calm. "The guy I sent Amazon gift cards to when he couldn't afford snacks in Kuwait is suddenly too important to include me?" "You're being dramatic," he snapped. "It's one weekend. It's not like anyone's dying." I felt heat rush to my cheeks. Number just a sibling being erased. That's all. "Amy," he said sharply, like I was being unreasonable, "please don't turn this into one of your things. Kaylin just got back. Let's keep this positive." "Yeah," I muttered. "Positive for everyone but me." He didn't respond. I could hear him breathing on the line, heavy, frustrated, like I was the difficult one. "I gotta go," he finally said. "We're doing a final walkthrough at the venue." Click. I stood there, phone still against my ear, even though the call was dead. I could still hear him in my head, though. "Don't make this a thing. It's just a reunion." That's when it hit me. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't new. I'd been overlooked before, forgotten birthdays, left out of photos. The default assumption that I'd be fine with whatever decisions they made. I was the one who stayed local while everyone else scattered. The one who took Dad to appointments when he had back surgery. The one who showed up with flowers for Mom on Mother's Day when no one else remembered. I even designed Kaylin's deployment banner from scratch, free of charge, and drove to get it printed the night before he left. But when it came time to welcome him home, I was excess baggage. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall, that numb silence spreading in my chest. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my laptop, went to a travel site, and typed in one word: escape. Flights out of Seattle popped up. Hawaii, too humid. Miami, too crowded. Then I saw it. Colorado, Breckenridge, snow-covered cabins, mountains like watercolor paintings, fireplaces crackling in silence. I didn't even blink. I booked it. First-class flight, slopeside cabin, ski lessons, all of it. If I wasn't good enough to be on the guest list, then I was damn sure going to be somewhere better. I closed the laptop, feeling the tightness in my chest loosen just a bit. I didn't need their stage. I'd build my own. I opened the flight booking page, but it wasn't just about skipping a party anymore. It was about reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd let them chip away at for years. My worth. By the time I went to bed that night, the reservation was confirmed and my suitcase was halfway packed. I hadn't even told anyone I wasn't going. I figured they'd notice eventually, or maybe they wouldn't. That thought stung more than I expected. The next morning, I woke up early, not from an alarm, but from that uneasy pulse under the skin, like my body knew something was off. I reached for my phone, half dreading what I'd see, and there it was. A message from my mom. Delora. "Sweetheart, I know you're upset. I'll make sure Celine saves you a slice of cake." That one sentence sat on my screen like a paper cut to the heart. Short, soft, and somehow sharper than anything Dad said. I stared at it, waiting for something more. Acknowledgement? Regret? But no, just a cake slice, as if a sliver of sugar could patch the hole in my chest. I didn't respond. That had always been her way. Keep things light, pretty, manageable. "Don't stir the pot, Amy," she used to say. "Don't ruin the moment." She never wanted conflict, just harmony, even if it was fake. Especially if it was fake. I tossed on a hoodie and headed down the street to Brew Haven, the local cafe where I usually worked on design drafts. The cold morning air bit at my cheeks, and the wind carried a faint metallic scent, like rain had passed through steel. I wasn't hungry, but I ordered a black coffee anyway, something hot to wrap my hands around. I took a window seat, hoping for quiet. But quiet wasn't what I got. 2 tables away, I heard a voice I knew all too well. Bria, my cousin, loud, always half-performing. Her laugh was sharp, almost practiced. "I'm telling you, Drex, this party is insane," she said. "Celine went all out. 80 grand, easy." I stopped mid-sip. My fingers tightened around the cup. "Wait," Drex said. "How'd she even afford that?" "Her job doesn't cover that kind of spending." Bria chuckled. "I heard, don't quote me, but I heard she used someone's trust fund, one of the family accounts. Guess she figured they'd never notice." My pulse roared in my ears. They couldn't be talking about me. That couldn't be what she meant. But it made too much sense. I stood up too fast. My coffee sloshed, but I didn't care. My legs felt heavy as I walked out of the cafe, the bell over the door jangling like a warning bell in my chest. As I made my way home, the pieces started to click. Slow, bitter clicks. I remembered Grandpa's voice when I was 12, telling me, "This is for your future, kiddo. College, maybe a down payment one day. Don't let anyone touch it." And my parents agreeing, promising it was safe, untouched, mine. I never touched it. Not even when I was laid off 2 years ago and struggling to pay rent. I toughed it out, freelance gig after freelance gig, because I believed them. Now I wasn't so sure. Back in my apartment, I threw off my coat and opened my laptop. My hands were trembling as I logged into my bank account tied to the trust. Everything looked normal on the surface. No big deductions, no red flags. But I clicked into the access logs, and something strange popped up. A login from a Portland IP address. 3 weeks ago. That was when Celine started planning the party. That was when Dad started acting cagey on the phone. My chest tightened. A different kind of ache than before. Something deeper. Not just rejection, violation. I closed my eyes and took a breath, but it didn't help. If they took from me, if they used what was mine, and didn't even have the decency to include me in the celebration, I opened my notes app, began writing down the date of the login, the IP, the time. Then I whispered, barely audible even to myself, "If they touched it, I swear!" I didn't need more confirmation, but I was about to get it anyway. Still seated at my desk, I heard the familiar chime of a new email. The subject line stared back at me like it knew exactly what kind of damage it carried. Authorized withdrawal alert. I hesitated for a second, just one, and then clicked. There it was. Plain as day. A transaction processed under Morton Faulkner's name. $80,000. Removed from my trust account. Not pending, not requested. Already gone. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I'd misread it. Maybe it was a statement, or a tax summary, or something else. Anything else. But the amount was right. The date was 3 days ago, and the name, his name, was at the bottom of the authorization field. My hands went cold. I reread it once, twice, a third time. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. They hadn't just left me out of a party. They'd taken from me, and they hadn't said a word. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My body was still, but my brain was in chaos. Every beat of my heart thudded against my ribs like it was trying to get out. I couldn't sit still anymore. I stood up, paced once, then sat down again. I needed more. I needed to know when they decided to do this. How far back did it go? I clicked back into the account settings and pulled up the login history. There it was. A session logged in from a Portland IP address. 3 weeks ago. Accessed the account, reviewed financial documents, then logged out 23 minutes later. My parents' house. That was their IP. The day lined up with the first time Celine had mentioned the welcome party on her socials. A whole mood board post with captions like, "When it's done right, it doesn't come cheap." My throat tightened. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a paperwork mix-up. It was a plan, a deliberate decision, a betrayal orchestrated by the people who were supposed to protect me. Dad didn't just know, he signed it. I couldn't stop thinking about all the times I bit my tongue to keep the peace. I remembered when Celine missed Mom's surgery and I covered for her. When Kaylin borrowed money just until Friday and I never saw a dime. I remembered standing in the rain outside the hospital that night, bringing my mom her coat, and Dad patting my shoulder like I was the reliable one. And that's what they counted on, wasn't it? That I'd always show up, always be reasonable, always understand. I pushed the chair back and stood up again, this time with purpose. I needed to breathe, but nothing about the air in my apartment was helping. I walked to the window, stared out at the gray Seattle skyline. I wasn't crying. That surprised me. Instead, I felt this strange clarity, like the fog had finally lifted. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. I was the quiet one, the easy one, the one they could cut out of the photos, but still call when the pipes burst. I turned away from the window and went back to my desk. If they were going to treat me like I didn't matter, they were about to find out what happened when I finally believed them. I opened a blank document, began typing. Date of access, time, IP location, authorization log, screenshot attachments, notes, folders. This wasn't about throwing a tantrum. This was about tracking the truth. They wanted silence. They could have it. But I'd be the one writing it. And right when I thought it couldn't get worse, Elowen called. I almost didn't answer. I was mid-scroll through my document, adding timestamps and file names, trying to stay numb enough to keep moving. But when her name flashed across my screen, I paused. Something in my gut told me this wasn't just another check-in. I swiped to answer. "Hey," I said, my voice already tired. She didn't waste time. "Amy, I wasn't going to say anything, but after what you told me, you need to know." I sat upright. "Know what?" "I was at the house a couple of weeks ago," she said. "Dad was in the kitchen, talking to Celine and Mom. I don't think they realized I was around the corner." She paused. I could hear the background hum of a running car, muffled traffic. She was probably parked somewhere private. "He said, and I remember it exactly, he said, 'Amy doesn't need it. Celine does. Some kids are just more worth the money.'" I didn't say anything. I couldn't. She added softly, "It wasn't a slip. It sounded settled, like something he's believed for a long time." My mouth felt dry, but I couldn't swallow. Those weren't just words. That wasn't a mistake. That was a worldview. And I'd been orbiting it my entire life, hoping one day I'd earn a closer seat. "He meant it," I finally whispered. Elowen didn't disagree. The silence stretched between us. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like we were both watching something sacred snap in real time. She cleared her throat. "And it's a mess over here. Celine's freaking out. One of the caterers bailed. The decor vendor is an hour late, and Morton's been barking at everyone. Apparently, Celine changed the menu last minute and forgot to confirm. Now no one knows what's going on." I leaned back against the couch, eyes closed. "Of course she did." "And no one's stepping in to fix it," she added. "They keep asking where you are." I almost laughed. "Where I am? Like they didn't actively uninvite me? You know how this family works. Everyone wants the calm voice in the storm, but they don't want to give her a seat at the table." I stared at the ceiling. I used to be the one who fixed things, who coordinated the group chats, called the vendors, rewrote speeches the night before an event. I was the one who stayed late, cleaned up when others left, made sure Mom had her meds and Dad had his coat. And now I was the villain, the ghost. Or maybe I always was, just useful until I wasn't. They never protected me, I said quietly. They just drained me dry and called it love. There was no fight left in my tone, just a kind of tired certainty I'd never known before. They don't even realize what they lost, I added. No, Elowen said, but they're about to. We ended the call shortly after. She sounded uneasy, caught in the crossfire, but I knew her well enough to recognize her loyalty. She wouldn't say more than she had to, but she'd say what mattered. The room was silent again, but it felt different now, like the kind of quiet that comes right before the storm breaks. I stood up and looked out the window. The city moved below me, indifferent, fast, alive. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. They weren't losing me. They already had. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and exhaled the last thread of guilt I'd been carrying. I didn't want revenge, but the truth deserved a voice, and it was about to get one. So when Dad called again, blaming me for the chaos, I was ready. The phone buzzed on the table, his name lighting up the screen like it always did when something needed cleaning up. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Hello? His voice was clipped, already frayed at the edges. If you had just come, maybe Celine wouldn't be falling apart right now. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted him to sit in that silence for a moment. He kept going, filling the void the way he always did when he was cornered. She's overwhelmed, Amy. The caterers are late, the sound system's a mess, and your mother is trying to keep things from spiraling. You know how Celine gets. Maybe if you had been there... Stop, I said finally. He went quiet. You're blaming me for the mess you all made. He sighed. That long, theatrical sigh that said, here we go again. This is a family, Amy. Then stop acting like I'm not in it. That shut him up. I almost hoped he'd yell, because then, at least, we'd be speaking the same language. But instead, he exhaled and offered his favorite line, the one he pulled out when he wanted to guilt me into folding. We all make sacrifices. Yours just look different. I didn't have the energy to decode that, not today. You made a decision without me. You used my trust. You cut me out. Don't expect me to be your solution now. I didn't know it would matter this much to you, he muttered. It was like hearing a stranger say my name. I hung up before I said something that would make me feel ashamed later. Not 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, a message. I half expected another passive-aggressive note from Mom, but it was from Celine. Celine, I thought you didn't care about money. You always acted like you were above all this. I needed it more than you. I read it twice, slowly. No apology, no regret. Just that slippery, hollow justification people like her used when they crossed the line and didn't want to own it. I needed it more than you. It was the kind of sentence that told me everything I ever needed to know about how she viewed me. My boundaries were optional, my resources reallocatable, and my silence expected. I put the phone down gently on the table, as if the act of not throwing it was some kind of grace. I sat at my desk, opened a new email draft, but halfway through typing "to whom it may concern," I stopped. Number not yet. I closed the tab and opened my notes instead. Typed, "If they push one more inch, I'll burn the whole illusion down." I leaned back in my chair and stared at that line like it was a mirror. Calm, final, not a threat, just a promise. The weight in my chest didn't disappear, but it shifted. It wasn't grief anymore, it was precision. I picked up my phone again and sent one message to Elowen. Me. Save everything. Screenshots, dates, anything you hear. There was no need to explain. She'd get it. I set the phone down, exhaled slowly. Not revenge, just readiness. And the moment I hit block on all their numbers, something in me unlocked. The silence that followed wasn't eerie. It was clean, sharp, even. Like walking out of a room full of shouting and realizing you'd forgotten what your own thoughts sounded like. I opened my messages one last time. Dad, Celine, Mom, even Bria. One by one, I pressed and held, hovered over the little option that used to feel too final. Block, block, block. No more, be the bigger person. No more, just come for the cake. No more guilt wrapped in tradition and passive-aggressive pleasantries. It wasn't a tantrum. It was an act of preservation. I stood up, stretched my spine, and took a deep breath. The air in my apartment didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt still, like I could finally breathe all the way in. I booked a last-minute flight, one way to Colorado. The idea had lived quietly in the back of my mind all week, but now it had form. It wasn't an escape, it was a redirection. If they wouldn't make space for me, I'd make my own somewhere higher, colder, quieter. Packing took less time than I expected. I didn't bring much, just the essentials: my favorite sweater, sketch pad, a worn paperback I never finished. I deleted every voicemail from my dad, even the old ones I'd kept just in case. The cab ride to SeaTac was uneventful. For once, I didn't check my phone. There was no one left to wait for. As the plane lifted off the tarmac and pierced the cloud line, I caught my reflection in the window. I was smiling. It wasn't big, but it was real. Landing in Colorado, the air greeted me like a slap and a kiss. Brisk, clean, unapologetic. I liked that about it. At the lodge bar that evening, I took a seat near the fireplace with a hot cider and let the heat from the flames work its way through me. The clink of glasses, the murmur of voices, and the sound of a live acoustic guitar floated through the room. That's when I heard it. "Amy?" I turned and blinked. "Kira?" She was grinning, wide-eyed. "You haven't changed a bit." I laughed. "You're a liar, but I'll take it." We hugged like no time had passed, and suddenly the years between college and now felt paper thin. We caught up over a second drink. Kira was still in design, freelance now, working remotely out of Denver. She talked fast and laughed easily, and being around her felt like sliding into an old hoodie I forgot I still owned. "You always had this grounding energy," she said, nudging her glass toward me. "People leaned on you." "Yeah," I said quietly, "and I let them." She gave me a look. "Too much." I shrugged. "I thought it made me valuable." "You were always valuable, even when you weren't being their emotional first responder." She raised her glass again. "To not doing that anymore." We clinked. Later that night, wrapped in flannel and curled under a thick duvet, I lay in bed watching snow fall beyond the big window. The fireplace crackled softly in the corner, and my fingers curled around a mug of peppermint tea. I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel guilt. I felt whole. Then Bria posted, and all hell broke loose. I woke up to my phone buzzing like a fire alarm, screen flooded with DMs. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly flooding my inbox. "Are you okay? Heard you were dealing with something? Your mom said you've been going through a rough patch." Rough patch? I sat up slowly, blinking against the morning light filtering through the mountain window, heart already pounding. And then I saw it. Bria's post. No name, no direct tags. Just a smug caption attached to a group photo from the party. Some people let jealousy poison their own bloodlines. Let them choke on the silence they created. Another cousin shared the post with a comment. "So sad when family lashes out just to be noticed. Hope they get the help they need." A third, a friend of Celine's I think, retweeted it with a blunt take. "Not everyone deserves a seat at the table, especially not the ones who set it on fire." They were talking about me. They didn't even bother to hide it. I wasn't surprised, but I was done pretending to be shocked. I opened my screenshots folder, clicked New Album, named it Receipts. One by one, I saved everything, every caption, every comment. I forwarded it all to Elowen. "Me. Save this. We might need it." Then I opened Instagram, took a breath, and posted a photo from my cabin window, the mountains stretching wide and unapologetic under a silver sky. The caption was simple: "Peace isn't given." Sometimes you earn it by walking away from people who'd rather ruin you than apologize. No tags, no names, but anyone who needed to see it would know. The post started picking up likes within minutes. Old coworkers commented, "You've always carried yourself with grace." A college classmate wrote, "Some people can't handle accountability, so they weaponize stories." Even Uncle Mike chimed in, "Truth has a funny way of climbing out, huh? Proud of you, kid." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt accurate. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the narrative they tried to twist. They painted me as bitter, unstable, selfish, because it was easier than facing what they'd done. But now, the silence they depended on, I'd set it on fire. That afternoon, I was sipping tea in the lodge lounge when Elowen texted again. "Elowen, Mom just messaged me. Celine's spiraling. Dad's furious. They're saying you ruined the party." I stared at the message for a long second. Me. They're about to find out what ruined really looks like. So I wrote the email that would end the silence and hit send. It wasn't dramatic. No fire in the fingertips. No music swelling in the background. Just a quiet click and the sound of my own breath, steady and calm for the first time in days. The message was addressed to the Trust's legal counsel, with every extended family member CC'd. A full list, no cherry-picking. Subject: unauthorized withdrawal from personal trust. Request for legal review. The body was short, sharp, surgical. On date, an $80,000 withdrawal was executed from my designated trust fund, originally created by my grandfather for my future use. This transaction was authorized under Morton Faulkner's name without my consent. Access logs from my banking portal confirm the account was viewed and modified from an IP address located at Morton and Delora Faulkner's residence in Portland, Oregon. I'm submitting this documentation for investigation. This is no longer a family matter. It is a legal one. Attached were the screenshots, every login, every timestamp, every digital fingerprint. No threats, no insults, just the truth, finally laid bare for everyone to see. And when I hit send, my hands didn't shake. I leaned back and let the silence fill the space between who I used to be and who I was finally becoming. 15 minutes later, my phone lit up like wildfire. Calls from numbers I recognized. Calls I didn't. I didn't answer any of them. Then came a text from Elowen. "Elowen, they're scrambling. I think Bria just left the party early. Celine's crying in the guest suite. Morton keeps saying you made this personal. Mom's sobbing about family destruction. It's chaos." I could picture it. Streamers half-hanging, cold hors d'oeuvres sweating on glass trays. Faces twisted in panic, not guilt. They were more outraged about being exposed than about what they'd done. Good. I put my phone down and walked out to the cabin patio, wrapped in a thick shawl as snowflakes drifted lazily around me. Then came the email reply. From the trust advisor. "Amy, thank you for your documentation. We are taking this seriously and will initiate a formal review process. Please do not respond to further personal inquiries regarding this issue. We'll handle it." It was so simple, so clean. It cut through months, years, of gaslighting and guilt like glass through paper. I whispered, "They're finally going to be held accountable." Then I opened Instagram again and posted my final message. It was a photo of me standing on the Overlook Trail behind the lodge, hands in my coat pockets, mountains behind me, sky starting to darken with snow. The caption, "Silence isn't noble when it protects injustice." I didn't check the comments. I didn't need to. Later that night, I stepped outside again. The air was so crisp it stung a little when I breathed too deep, but I welcomed the bite. It reminded me I was still here. Still solid, still mine. I looked up at the stars and thought about the version of me who would have done anything to keep peace, who would have shown up at that party with a fake smile and a wrapped gift, pretending nothing was broken. That girl was gone. I didn't lose my family. I left the role they'd written for me and wrote my own. And in the morning, for the first time in years, I didn't reach for my phone. I reached for peace. The quiet wasn't unnerving. It was earned. I brewed my coffee, wrapped myself in a thick cardigan, and stepped out onto the snowy deck. The air held that early morning stillness only mountain towns know. Crisp, untouched, sacred. I sat in the Adirondack chair and watched the snow melt off the railing, steam rising where sunlight touched it. No calls, no pings, no drama. Just me, the smell of roasted beans, and the hush of a world not asking anything from me. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't hoping they'd call. I wasn't waiting for the apology that never came. I didn't need it anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was done. That afternoon, Elowen sent a final update, one I hadn't asked for, but didn't mind reading. Elowen: Morton's golf group pulled his speaking spot. Word got around. Elowen: Celine's PR team dropped her after a sponsor backed out. Elowen: Mom sent a 5-minute voice message. I haven't listened to it. Figured you wouldn't either. She was right. I didn't open it. I just pressed delete. Some stories don't need a reply. Some doors stay closed. Not out of malice, but out of necessity. Later that week, while sipping tea at the Lodge Cafe, Kira slid a contract across the table. It's remote. Design work for a women-led housing nonprofit. They want someone who gets community and boundaries. I didn't hesitate. I'm in, I said. Not just for the job, but for the chance to build something that wasn't rooted in guilt or sacrifice. Something that felt like mine. 2 days later, I packed up my apartment in Seattle. Most of it fit in boxes. A few items I tossed, and one photo I left behind. It was framed, faded a little at the edges. Me, Celine, and Kaylin at a birthday party when we were 10. I stared at our faces longer than I meant to. That girl deserved better, I whispered. I'm giving her that now. Denver wasn't a clean slate. I wasn't starting over. I was starting forward. The night before my move, I curled into bed with a journal and a pen I'd had since college. On the final page, I wrote, "They didn't break me. They just showed me who I was without them." I closed the book, slipped it into my suitcase, and stepped outside one last time. Snow crunched under my boots. The mountain stood behind me, steady as ever. The cabin lights flickered warm behind frosted windows. The world hadn't changed, but I had. This isn't a reunion story, it's a freedom story, and I'm finally home. You know, if you'd told me a year ago that I'd walk away from my own family, not in anger, but in clarity, I would have laughed and poured another cup of coffee, thinking I'd always be the one to fix things. But here's what I've learned. Silence doesn't make you noble. Self-sacrifice isn't love when it's demanded. And forgiveness doesn't mean handing people a shovel while they dig your worth into the ground. I didn't burn a bridge. I just stopped handing out bricks to people who never planned to build with me. So if you're watching this, and you've ever felt like the one holding it all together while no one held you, I see you. You're not selfish for choosing peace. You're not dramatic for asking to be treated fairly. You're not wrong for finally saying, enough. Maybe this isn't just my story, maybe it's yours too. So let me ask you, have you ever had to choose peace over family? Have you ever walked away not because you wanted to, but because you finally had to? Let me know in the comments. Type 1 if this hit home, or drop the state or country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story's reaching. And hey, if you didn't like the video, that's okay too. Tell me why. I'm here for real stories, real conversations. If this video resonated with you, inspired you, or made you feel less alone, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories coming, more truth, more heart, and more reminders that sometimes walking away is the bravest step toward home. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one. Hi, I'm Seren. My sister looked me in the eyes and said, "This table is for family." Then she laughed, as if that seat didn't hold years of silence I'd swallowed to stay in their circle. They thought I'd sit quietly, again, pay the bill, shrink, smile. But that night, something snapped. They had no idea what was coming when I finally said no. Want to know what really happened when I stood up from that chair? and didn't sit back down? The exiled seat. I should have said no. I told myself that the entire drive over. With both hands clenched on the steering wheel, I rehearsed a dozen ways to back out. Fake an emergency, pretend I had COVID, claim the car broke down. But I didn't. Because the guilt in my mother's voice wasn't something I could shake off like dust from my coat. So there I was, in front of the Dominion Flame, a steakhouse so upscale even the air smelled smug. I stood outside for a second too long. The late summer heat of Austin hadn't fully settled into evening yet. My palms were already damp, heart tapping like a warning. I could still leave, get back in the car, drive home, pretend I never saw her text. But I didn't. The maitre d' recognized the name and led me in. And there they were, already seated at a long table near the center, under a massive chandelier. I saw my cousin Darian first, his grin spreading like oil across his face. Elira sat next to him, in a white dress a size too small, and a laugh a pitch too high. My mom was sandwiched between two aunts, nodding politely. No one noticed me for a full 3 seconds. Then Darian did. "Look who finally decided to show up," he called out, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "I was starting to think we weren't important enough for her anymore." I forced a smile. "Good evening." I took a step toward an empty chair at the end of the table, trying to sit without making a scene. But Elira's voice sliced in. She said, shaking her head with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That seat's for Uncle Leo, you know, family." The word dropped like ice water down my back. Darian leaned forward, pushing his chair slightly, closing off the space. "Yeah, we're packed in tonight. You might want to grab something from the other table over there." He gestured behind me without even glancing. It wasn't a joke. The others weren't laughing. My mother looked away. I just stood there. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I scanned the table, every chair filled with people I used to build pillow forts with, cry in front of, love. And now, not even room for me to sit. My pulse thudded hard in my ears. But I didn't say anything, not yet. I turned, walked toward an empty table, and dragged a chair back across the floor. The screech of metal legs over marble echoed too loudly, but I didn't stop. I set it just beside their table, not quite in, not quite out. Close enough to hear them, too far to be part of them. I sat down, ordered a black coffee, and folded my hands in my lap. My shoulders itched with the weight of every sideways glance in the room. The waiter gave me a curious look. I gave him nothing back. Across from me, Elira raised her glass. "To togetherness," she said with a smirk. "Some of us value it." They all laughed. Not everyone, but enough. Darian nudged someone and whispered something I didn't catch. I watched the condensation on my glass bead up and run like little escapes. I kept my face unreadable, because if I blinked too long, I'd give myself away. It had always been this way. When we were kids, I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the moody cousin who didn't want to play dress-up or talk about boys. I didn't drink in high school, didn't party in college. I built a life instead. Quietly, carefully, one piece at a time, and they never noticed until they needed something. Now that I'd built a company worth 7 figures and landed in a Forbes local feature, I was suddenly interesting again. But not for who I was, only for what I could give. They didn't say that, of course. No one ever says it out loud. That would be too honest. Instead, they play games like this, like musical chairs with dignity. I watched as they passed bread, laughed at stories, clinked glasses. No one asked me anything. No one cared what I'd been up to. The table might as well have been made of glass, and I was the smudge they refused to wipe clean. Then came the moment that sealed it. Darian made a joke, something about some people forgetting their roots once they have a little cash. And Elira, not missing a beat, threw her head back and laughed. She turned toward me, mid-laugh, eyes locking with mine. And she didn't flinch. She smiled wider. That wasn't laughter. That was a challenge. I sat still. My jaw clenched tight behind a calm expression. I took a sip of my coffee and let it burn on the way down. Better that than letting them see how much it all still hurt. This wasn't awkward. It was war. A plate full of expectations. I didn't flinch. Not on the outside. But inside, I felt something shift. Like a thread pulled too tight, finally starting to snap. Darian's jab. Elira's laugh. That look in her eyes. It was all part of the same script I'd seen before. But this time, I wasn't watching from the wings. They'd shoved me center stage, and I knew my role. The outsider with the wallet. A waiter appeared with a smile that felt rehearsed. Would you all like to see the dinner menus now? Darian sat up straighter and clapped his hands once. Let's do it, I'm starving. Menus were handed out like invitations to a performance. Oversized, leather-bound, designed to impress. Darian opened his dramatically, glancing toward Elira as if they were co-stars in a show only they understood. This place has Wagyu, right? He asked, flipping pages like he already knew the answer. I'll take that, medium rare, and let's do lobster too. He barely paused before shutting the menu with a thud. Oh, and a bottle of that Cabernet we had at Dad's birthday. Elira giggled. You're so predictable. But yeah, get one for the table. My eyes hadn't left my menu. Not because I was reading, but because I didn't want to meet their stares. I already knew what was happening. They hadn't asked me what I wanted. They didn't care. This wasn't about food. It was a declaration of entitlement, of assumption. I was the designated provider, seated on the fringe, yet expected to bankroll the entire fantasy. I glanced up and caught Darian's smirk. You good with that, Serene? He asked, voice smooth like he was doing me a favor by including me in the decision. I blinked once. Sure, sounds festive. He grinned wider. Knew you'd be cool. You always come through. Elira turned to the others. We should make tonight count. It's not every day we're all together. Rachel chimed in. Yeah, and if we're gonna celebrate, we better do it right. Might as well make it memorable. The rest of the table murmured in agreement. One of my uncles chuckled. Long as someone picks up the check. I froze, just for a second. And then came the kicker. Harlan leaned forward, his voice louder than necessary. Oh, come on. It's not like Seren can't handle it. She makes more than the rest of us put together. Laughter bubbled up around the table. Not loud, just enough to sting. That's right, Rachel added. She's our little tech queen now. Let her treat us, Elira said, tilting her head like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's what family's for, right? My fingers curled slightly under the tablecloth. They weren't even pretending to be subtle anymore. What started as snide remarks had evolved into a full-on group performance. The room was dim, but I could see every glint of satisfaction in their eyes, like they'd rehearsed this and couldn't wait to hit their lines. I could have said something then. I could have called it out. But I didn't. Instead, I gave a half smile and raised my coffee cup like a toast. To family, I said. They clinked their glasses, celebrating the punchline, not realizing I was rewriting the story in real time. Because I wasn't mad. Not yet. What I felt was precision. They thought they had me pegged, that I'd sit quietly, take the hits, and pay for the pleasure. They had no idea what I was planning. The rest of dinner passed in fragments. Appetizers arrived, crab cakes, truffle fries, foie gras. The conversation blurred, all surface-level chatter, with undercurrents of comparison, judgment, and performance. No one asked about my work. No one mentioned the startup I'd sold. No one said my name unless it followed a joke. I sat there, quietly calculating, watching them pour wine, pass plates, make toasts. They weren't trying to connect. They were trying to impress each other and punish me at the same time. And I let them. Because the more they talked, the more obvious it became. They weren't just trying to make me pay the bill. They were making me earn the right to be here. I heard Rachel laugh again. Let's not skip dessert. Get the sampler. Seren's got it. Darian raised an eyebrow. Yeah, let's do 3 of each. Might as well go all in. The waiter nodded, not even checking with me. The assumption was complete. I took a long breath. They thought they were clever. Let them think that. Let them dig the hole. I'd be the one handing them the shovel. The one who never spoke up. I watched them revel in their own performance. Every clink of a glass. Every fake laugh like a metronome keeping time for their manipulation. They thought they were winning. But what they didn't see was me scanning the table. Not for food, not for kindness. I was searching for one face. The only one I'd come here for. My mother. Maeve sat near the middle, her back straight, smile soft, eyes darting to the candles, the ceiling, the waiter. Anywhere but me. I waited for her gaze, a glance, even just the brush of concern. Nothing. She looked past me as if I were a shadow on the wall, like I wasn't even here. And that's when the ache twisted deeper. Not because they were laughing, not because they were greedy, but because the one person who knew better was silent. She always had been. The memory hit hard, so vivid I could almost feel the fabric of my childhood dress again. I was 11. Darian had poured orange soda in my backpack at my own birthday party. Said it was because I acted better than everyone. I had run to the kitchen, crying, hands sticky, notebooks ruined. Maeve had pulled me aside, smoothed my hair, and said, "Sweetheart, boys tease the girls they're threatened by. Just let it go. No correction, no defense, no apology for me, just a request to be quiet." And I had listened. Back then, I thought it was strength. Now, I knew better. The plates were being cleared when Elira's voice broke through the hum. "You know what I've noticed?" she said, brushing imaginary crumbs off her lap. "Self-made women are always the coldest, like they forget how to connect." I didn't look up. I didn't need to. The comment wasn't about women in general. It was about me. Darian laughed, of course. Rachel muttered, "Amen to that." I let the words hang there like smoke. Slowly, I raised my eyes and looked at my mother again. She shifted in her seat. Her lips moved just enough to say, "They didn't mean it like that." I blinked, once. And that was it. She wasn't defending me. She was excusing them, again. She whispered it low, like she didn't want to stir the pot, like my feelings were a disruption to the balance she kept trying to maintain. And in that moment, I felt something crack. Not loud, not messy, just final. There would be no scene, no shouting, but something was leaving me. Something that had tried, for years, to believe this family could change. My fork was still in my hand, but I didn't touch the dessert they'd ordered for the table. I wasn't hungry. I was unraveling. Quietly, intentionally. I drifted back into memory again. Not a moment, but a pattern. The dozens of times my mother had asked me to be the bigger person, to let it slide, to not make things worse. It was always about keeping the peace, even if that peace cost me every piece of myself. I stared into my half-empty coffee, the bitter edge still clinging to the rim. A waiter passed, offering another round of wine. I didn't speak, just raised my hand in a soft decline. I heard them still laughing, heard my name mentioned under someone's breath. I didn't care enough to track who it was. I wasn't sitting at their table. I wasn't even sitting in their reality anymore. In my mind, I began stepping back, not from the table, not from the room, but from the expectations that had caged me my entire life. For the first time in years, I saw Maeve not as mom, but as a woman who had chosen silence, again and again. And no matter how much I'd wanted her protection, I could no longer excuse her absence just because she came wrapped in motherhood. They joked, they drank, they piled desserts into each other's plates, and I sat still, letting the numbness wash in. Not to escape, but to prepare. Because while they laughed, I was changing. While they circled the same game, I was stepping off the board. And when I looked at my mother one last time, her eyes finally found mine. She blinked, startled, like she hadn't expected me to still be watching. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. She chose silence again. And now, I choose something else. The mask and the ultimatum. I didn't say a word. just held my mother's gaze long enough for her to understand. I wasn't waiting anymore. The silence between us stretched for maybe 2 seconds. Then I stood and quietly excused myself, stepping away from the table as naturally as I could. I made my way to the lounge area off the main dining floor, where the lights were lower, the music softer, and the illusion of peace a little more believable. It wasn't about needing air, it was about not suffocating. I sat near a tall window facing Congress Avenue. The view was blurred by the reflection of the chandelier behind me. People passed by outside, free and unaware. For a brief second, I envied their anonymity. Footsteps approached. I didn't look up, I already knew. "Hey," Darian said, voice smooth like always. "You okay?" I didn't answer. He took the liberty of sitting across from me like we were old friends catching up over drinks. "You know how they are," he began, tone casual. "Loud, dumb, a little tactless, but harmless." I kept my eyes on the street. He waited a beat, then leaned in. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, this whole dinner, it wasn't just about catching up. You probably figured that out already." "No kidding. But here's the thing," he continued, flashing that tired charm he used on women and investors alike. "You showing up tonight? That meant a lot. To Mom, to the family. They were never going to say it, of course. They're all too proud for that. But they notice, especially after, well, you know, the Forbes piece." There it was. He gave me a tight-lipped smile. "You've done well for yourself, Saran. We all see it." I said nothing. "And tonight? It's just a dinner. One bill. It's not about the money. It's about the gesture." He smiled like he'd just solved world peace. "You pay, we laugh, we drink. We toast to you. Everyone walks away feeling good. Win-win." I turned to face him fully. "You mean I pay, and they feel good?" He blinked, but the smile didn't falter. "Semantics." I leaned back in the chair. "So that's the plan, huh? Hand me the script and hope I play along." He chuckled, low. "Come on, Saran. Don't turn this into some kind of protest. It's family. We razz each other. We lean in. We cover when someone can't. We're all adults. You're not gonna let a couple offhand jokes ruin the night, are you?" That word again. Family. Funny how it was always weaponized when they wanted something. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shift in my seat. "I'm not here to ruin anything," I said evenly. "But I'm also not here to fund a show I wasn't cast in." He exhaled sharply, eyes narrowing just a little. "Okay," he said, dropping the smile. "If that's how you feel." There it was, the pivot. The moment charm slid into pressure. "But just know," he continued, "if you don't step up here, it won't go unnoticed." I stared at him. "Is that a threat?" I asked. "No," he said too quickly. "It's just reality. This family talks, always has. You know how Mom is? You know how the others are. I'm trying to protect you, honestly. From the narrative, the narrative. If you refuse to do something this small," he added, "it gives them permission to say a lot worse." That was the moment I realized. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to control the fallout. I smiled, slow and careful. "You don't get to build a fire under me," I said, "and then ask why I'm sweating." He sat back like I'd slapped him. I leaned forward slightly. "And if you think I'm the kind of woman who pays hush money in the form of cheesecake and lobster, you're not nearly as smart as you think." He blinked. For the first time all night, Darian actually blinked. Then he glanced away, adjusting his shirt collar like it had suddenly gotten tight. "I'm trying to keep things from getting messy," he muttered. "They already are," I said softly, "but not because of me." He stood, hands on his hips, looking like he wanted to say more. Instead, he nodded once, sharper than necessary, and walked back to the table. From where I sat, I could see his shoulders tense. He rejoined the others with a forced laugh, and some comment I didn't catch. I saw Elira turn toward him, her smile faltering. Maeve reached for her glass. Something was different. I hadn't won. But I'd broken the script. When even love isn't enough. I stayed in the lounge long after Darian returned to the table. The air felt heavier now. The distant clatter of forks and fake laughter didn't reach me the same way anymore. I was untethered from them, like a balloon they let go, expecting it to come drifting back. But I wasn't floating. I was watching. That's when my phone buzzed. I glanced down. It was her. Mom, calling. For a second, I just stared at the screen. My finger hovered over the green button, then pulled away. I let it ring twice more before I answered. Serene! Her voice cracked softly, barely louder than a whisper. Sweetheart, are you okay? My throat tightened. She sounded like she used to, on those rare nights when I had the flu, or after Dad left and I cried into her lap. She sounded like the mom I used to believe could fix anything. I know tonight was hard, she said, pausing. They can be a lot, but they're not bad people. They just don't always know how to handle your success. You've always been strong, stronger than them. I leaned back in the chair, eyes on the ceiling now. Is that what this is? I asked quietly. Me being punished for doing well? No, she said quickly. Don't twist my words, baby. I'm saying, you're not like them. You've got the backbone. That's why I knew you'd handle this better than they would. She meant it as a compliment, but all I heard was surrender. She was asking me to carry the weight again, wrap it up, swallow it down, and be the better person. Still, for a moment, I let myself believe her. Maybe she really was trying. Maybe this was her way of saying she saw me now, not as an ATM or a black sheep, but as her daughter. Maybe. After the call ended, I didn't move. I just stared at the dim chandelier above me, the light fracturing slightly through a small crack in the glass. Like everything beautiful in this family, it was polished, but broken. By the time I got home, it was past midnight. I didn't even bother turning on the lights. I set my phone on the kitchen counter and poured myself water, my mind replaying her words again and again. You've always been strong. That's why I knew you'd handle it. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't acknowledged her silence. But she'd called. And that had meant something, hadn't it? I went to bed thinking maybe I'd call her back in the morning. Maybe I'd invite her over. Maybe we could start from a quieter place. But morning had its own plans. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a message. Mom. Saran, don't make this about you. Think of the family's name. Just help them out this once. That was it. One sentence. And every fragile piece of hope I had been clinging to shattered with it. Not because she asked for help, but because she said, don't make this about you. As if I was being dramatic. As if their cruelty, their laughter, their constant belittling was just a moment I had blown out of proportion. She didn't call to mend anything. She called to soften me up. The tears didn't come right away. Not out of pride. There was just nothing left in the tank. My chest was heavy, but my eyes stayed dry. I opened the message, read it twice, then slowly typed my response. I'm not your scapegoat, not anymore. I hit send. No punctuation, no room for misreading. I set the phone down, stepped away from the kitchen and into the hallway, each footstep quieter than the last. The emotional cord had snapped, not with a scream, but with a silence I no longer feared. I was done asking to be understood. Now I would make myself clear. Smile for the camera, I had made myself clear. At least, I thought I had. But clarity doesn't mean people will listen. It just means they'll find a new way to pretend they didn't hear you. I was still in the hallway, leaning against the cool wall, when my phone lit up again. A new text. Elira. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry if tonight felt weird. I know things got awkward. I still love you. You know that, right? No punctuation at the end. No ownership of what she'd done. Just vague softness wrapped in sugar, and wrapped again in self-preservation. I stared at the screen for a moment, letting the message sit there like a cheap peace offering. Weird. That's what she called it. I didn't reply. Not yet. Something about it didn't sit right. The tone was off. Too polished. Too rehearsed. I locked my phone and stood up straight, already planning to leave. But curiosity got the better of me, and as I walked slowly back toward the dining area, I opened Instagram. A notification popped up. Illyra.ray tagged you in a story. I tapped it. It was a boomerang clip, one of those cheerful little loops. The table, laughing, glasses raised, everyone smiling like it was the best night of their lives. Caption: Family over everything. I looked closer. The video had been taken earlier, just before dessert. I remembered that moment, because it was the exact second I'd gotten up to leave for the lounge. I was in the frame, kind of. You could see my elbow, half my shoulder, cut right at the edge. Like an afterthought, someone forgot to crop properly. She'd tagged me, but carefully angled the video to crop me out visually. I was there, but I wasn't. It was surgical, a curated illusion. That was never an apology. It was a setup. Text me sweetly, post me silently. It wasn't reconciliation. It was branding. I was being used as a prop in a narrative where they looked like the inclusive, loving, messy but adorable family, and I was just the blurry ghost who never fit in frame. I took a breath. It didn't steady me, it only stoked the fire. No more backing down, no more be the bigger person. I wasn't interested in size, I was interested in truth. I walked back to the table slowly, with a calm they didn't recognize on my face. Illyra noticed me first. Her expression tightened just a fraction before she replaced it with a smile. That same stage smile I'd seen since we were kids. The cameras on, behave smile. She opened her mouth to speak. I didn't give her the chance. If anyone here thinks I'm just here for your highlight reel, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, but not loud enough to startle. Let me make this very clear. I pulled out my own phone, held up her Instagram post. I am not your accessory. Her mouth opened, but I didn't stop. You want me cropped out of your life? Do it honestly. Don't tag me for optics. Don't pretend you reached out when all you did was hide your insult behind a filter. Maeve whispered my name, like she was trying to calm a dog. Darian leaned forward. Serene, don't do this here. Oh? I turned to him. Where should I do it, Darian? At your next wine tasting? Or maybe during the next group text where you all pretend I'm too tense to be invited? No one said anything. I'm done playing quiet. I'm done making everyone comfortable while I bleed under the table. I sat down, slowly, in the chair I had dragged earlier. Not a full seat at the table, just close enough to remind them I'd never really left. The silence that followed felt deeper than anything anyone had said all night. Illyra stared at her phone like it had betrayed her. Darian's jaw clenched. Maeve looked down, twisting her napkin into knots. And I didn't flinch. I wasn't background anymore. I was about to become the plot twist. This bill comes with a receipt. Not with screaming, not with a grand gesture, but with the kind of stillness that makes people nervous. The waiter returned, holding the leather-bound check holder like it was a crown waiting to be placed. He didn't hesitate, didn't glance around the table. He placed it directly in front of me. It landed like a gavel. For a beat, no one said anything. Then, Darian broke the silence, his tone all smug nonchalance. You got this, right? He said, stretching his arms behind his head. It's nothing for you. There it was, the trap, the moment they'd all been circling toward like vultures dressed in designer labels. I let my hand rest on the bill, didn't open it right away. I just looked around. Their expressions flickered. Rachel, with her perfected Instagram smile. Illyra adjusting her napkin like she wasn't staring. My mother still looking down. Her glass now just a stem, clutched in trembling fingers. Then I opened it. $3,247. Wagyu, lobster, truffles, vintage wine, double desserts, and not a single thing I had ordered. I inhaled once, slow and shallow, then exhaled through my nose. They thought silence meant surrender. They forgot silence can be strategic. I closed the bill, slow and deliberate. Then I reached across the table and slid it gently in front of Darian. I didn't say anything, not yet. He blinked down at it, confusion flickering for half a second before his face tightened. "What's this?" he asked, though we both knew the answer. I finally spoke. "Oh, you thought I was covering this. That's cute." His jaw clenched. "You're serious?" he said, voice low. Elira leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Come on, Seren. This isn't the time for theatrics." Rachel added, "Yeah, we all agreed this was kind of your night. You were the one who said, 'to family,' remember?" "That was before you cropped me out of your family photo," I said without flinching. Rachel looked away. Elira straightened her back. "Fine," she snapped. "We'll split it. 3 ways, but not with her. She's not family." Her voice cracked just enough on the word family to draw attention from the next table over. People turned. The energy shifted. For once, their quiet rejection wasn't behind closed doors or buried in sarcasm. It was loud, ugly, public, and the restaurant noticed. Forks stopped clinking. Chatter slowed. Someone at another table whispered, "What the hell's going on?" I stood up, slow, calm. I looked down at Elira, then at Darian, then finally at my mother, who still couldn't meet my eyes. "You keep calling me not family," I said. "Let me make it easier." I took 1 step back from the table. "You're right." Nobody breathed. "I don't belong here, not because I changed, but because I outgrew the script." Maeve looked up, lips parted like she was about to say my name, but I shook my head before she could. "You wanted me to sit quietly and pay for the privilege of being mistreated," I continued. "That was never family. That was theater." Darian muttered, "Don't make this dramatic." I turned toward him. "It's not drama. It's a receipt. You cashed in on me for years. This is just your balance due." And with that, I turned and walked away from the table, again. But this time, I wasn't retreating. I was leaving on purpose. I could feel their eyes on my back, the silence behind me louder than any insult they could throw. I didn't owe them noise, just distance. Family ends where dignity begins. They said I wasn't family. I finally believed them. I kept walking, but only a few steps. Just enough to let the silence hang. Just enough to give them time to realize what had really happened. The room around us hadn't moved, but something in the air had shifted, something final. There was no more chatter, no more clinking glasses or fake toasts. I turned slowly, one last time, and looked at the table. Nobody was smiling now. Darian's smirk was gone, replaced by that tight-lipped look he used when deals slipped through his fingers. "You're really going to do this?" he muttered, like I'd just embarrassed him at a board meeting. Elira's hand twitched on her wine glass. She glanced at the people around us. For once, she looked worried about how this might play. Not on Instagram, but in real life. No one backed her up. Rachel looked down, chewing her lip like she wanted to disappear. Velda had gone pale. And Maeve just sat there, frozen, still clutching her napkin like it could save her from the truth. They didn't expect me to call their bluff. I walked slowly to the end of the table, not rushing, not storming, just moving with the kind of clarity that doesn't leave room for interpretation. "You all sat here," I said, voice steady, "and decided I didn't belong." My eyes swept over the table. Darian flinched. "But what none of you ever asked was, do I want to?" That landed. I turned to Maeve, fully now. Her shoulders looked smaller than I remembered. "You knew," I said. "You knew they were setting this up, and you let them." Her mouth opened, then closed. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "You didn't have to defend me. But you could have noticed me." Still nothing. From the side, Velda whispered, "We don't air family drama in public." I glanced at her without moving my head. You should have thought of that before posting fake apologies and cutting me out of family photos. She shut up fast. Harlan muttered something under his breath, but it didn't matter. His glare was familiar, toothless. The collapse wasn't loud. It was quieter than I imagined. A soft implosion of years of expectations finally folding under their own weight. And maybe that's what made it hit harder. I reached into my purse and pulled out $100 bill, clean, crisp, tucked between my ID and a stick of gum. I walked to the center of the table and laid it down. This should cover the coffee, I said, and my seat. I paused, letting the sentence finish itself. Then I turned toward the exit. My heels clicked against the floor, each step louder than their silence. I didn't rush, didn't flinch, just walked, steady and whole. And then, just as I pushed the door open, I heard it. Serin! Maeve's voice, software, breaking. But I didn't stop walking. Because sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes what you need more than love is air, and space, and the dignity of knowing you finally chose yourself. The silence that heals. I never looked back, but I heard my name. And this time, I didn't stop walking. 2 days later, I woke up in my apartment, wrapped in a kind of stillness that didn't ache. There were no missed calls, no texts, no new voicemails, no digital breadcrumbs leading back to that table. Just me, the soft hum of the air conditioning, and the late morning sun filtering through half-closed blinds. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't bracing for the next thing, the next jab, the next demand, the next guilt-laced, I just need a little favor. The silence didn't feel empty, it felt earned. I sat up slowly. My body wasn't sore, but something deeper inside me felt reset, like I had crossed a bridge and burned it behind me, not in rage, but in necessity. Mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed once. A voice message. Maeve. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the play button for a full minute before I tapped it. Her voice was softer than I expected. Tired. Cracked around the edges. Serene, I don't expect you to forgive me, and I'm not going to pretend I didn't make it worse. There was a pause, the sound of her breath hitching. I know they were wrong. I know I should have said something. I was scared. That's not an excuse, but if you never come back, I still love you. Click. No follow-up, no second message, just that. I didn't cry because I was broken. I cried because, for once, someone in that family didn't ask me for something. She just left the door open, quietly. I played the message again, then set the phone down, and didn't reply. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Some wounds heal with time. Others become part of the skin, like a scar you stop noticing until someone touches it. Later that night, I opened my laptop. My startup's dashboard lit up with numbers, graphs, real momentum. The work I'd built without a single favor. Every email, every investor pitch, every long night of questioning if it would all fall apart. And yet, here it was. Alive. Growing. I met my own eyes in the reflection of the screen. I didn't lose them, I whispered. I found myself. I closed the laptop and stood, walking to the kitchen where I poured a glass of wine and opened the balcony door. Austin's skyline stretched out in front of me, quiet, glowing, unaware of my family's theatrics. The kind of city that lets you disappear and reappear entirely on your own terms. Just as I took the first sip, my phone buzzed again. A message from Elira. A photo. The rest of them gathered around Maeve's backyard fire pit, smiling, toasting marshmallows. The caption read, "Real ones only, family first." I didn't open it, didn't zoom in to see who else was there. I placed the phone face down on the counter. I poured a little more wine, then walked back to the balcony and leaned against the railing. The city didn't ask me to smile. It didn't require an explanation. It just let me breathe. You can still love someone and still leave. Maybe you've been there, at a table where everyone smiles like nothing's wrong, while you sit there wondering how you became the outsider in your own family. I've been there too. And walking away wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I didn't leave out of anger, I left to protect my peace. Because family doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. Loyalty shouldn't come at the cost of your identity. It took me years to understand. You can love someone and still choose distance. You can set boundaries without guilt. And silence, when it comes from strength, not fear, is powerful. If this story hit close to home, drop a 1 in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't, that's okay. Tell me why. Your voice matters here. And if this message meant something to you, hit that subscribe button. There's more truth-telling to come, and I'm glad you're here for it.